Hi, I'm Angified. I started Angified Presents.
We share the love of music.
It has been medicine and therapy. Nothing else worked.
It has saved many of us. With mental health, we need to open our eyes.
Hurt people.
We ask that you listen, comprehend, and relate with your ears.
Form that heart of unity and one.
We share on this stage.
Statistics, feelings.
And ourselves.
We stand with the belief to be you, to be heard, and to be original.
We all may be different, with opinions and beliefs.
At the end of the day, we are all brothers and sisters.
We are family.
We ask that you join us in a magical journey with artists from around the world. Open your minds, let in the love,
and listen with your hearts.
We all want a better tomorrow. Be one.
Communicate and look out for one another. And then, and only then, will you find the world.
We will find peace in all the world.
You'll find the world. And you will find in this shining world. He was among us in every boy and girl. Many have been broken, red hearts turn black. Love will melt the ice and turn it back, and you will find the world. You will find the world. You will find the world. In your soul, laughter in your hearts. Together we can grow a better place. With love in our soul, and you will find together we can save it all. And you called home, where
We cover digital, audio workstations and music tools. We explore theory, gear at 82. How to arrange, compose, and the art of arranging. Taking a look at AI and how the times have changed. On a PC or a Mac and even with a mobile device, we'll be talking about it all every Thursday night. From software to plugins and synths that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talkin' IT. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. With the tutorials and tips on how much rap. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking IT. We're talking IT. Every Thursday night on Angified.
That's right. Every Thursday night, right here, with this guy.
Coming, Glenn.
That's fine. There you
I'm
are.
on the wrong side.
No, we can fix that. And then,
Oh, thank you.
There we go. All better.
You moved me. You
Yeah.
really moved me.
It's all right. Got here just in time.
And I'm ready to
Sliding
be
in the door.
highly educated.
Yep. And we're thinking about some concepts today, right?
Well, the concept of albums, and there will be talk about a concept album along the way.
There must be. There must be.
I wanted to do this topic because I've been having a lot of album talk in the back room. A couple of different artists, it's that time of year. Like people really like to release their albums. Spring going into summer. This is a popular time of year to make an album,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of thought that should go in to making an album. It seems like nowadays artists just kind of make a bunch of songs, and then once they've got enough, they figure they've got an album. But there's more to actually making an album. At least there used to be more to it, and it seems like nowadays it's just become a way to put a bunch of songs together. And I'd really like to talk about the purpose of why we make albums.
Yeah, and there's definitely. I mean, I'm gonna have several examples of things of albums that I've loved over the years that are examples of albums that make sense as an album. Like you're talking about just a mishmash of songs. Like a greatest hits thing could just be a mishmash of songs. Like
Yeah.
greatest hits picking from 7, 8 albums over the decades. Sure, you're going to end up with things that might not sound contiguous and all that. To me, the flow of an album also has to do with what key things are in. Just something as simple as that. Because if you go from something that's in C to something that's in C sharp, that's going to be a very shocking shift, right? So if you just took random songs and kind of shuffled them up and threw them in, in this order because it sounded cool or because the names looked cool in that order or whatever, but you put no thought into the musicality of why they're next to each other, that's a problem. Also, speed matters. Like, maybe a fast song, slow song, but also, if it's fast song, fast song, fast song, that's something too. Like, so you have to look at several different things when it comes to the flow of an album.
I had a talk with someone the other night about like how they arrange he's got 15 songs that he's trying to figure out like what's going to work to put together on this album. And as I was listening to the different ones, and like you said, he's got a few that are slower, a few that are faster. And I asked him, like, what's the purpose of this album? Is it like to debut you? And, is it like first time album? Hey, world, I'm this kind of artist. Then the album is hopefully representing you as an artist and it's going to get you a certain type of fan.
Yeah. And the other thing is, do all 15 songs need to be on the album? The fact that you finished 15 songs in this time doesn't mean that all 15 need to be on this album. Like it might be that there's a solid, good album out of, the 8 songs that are there, and the other 7, they're not garbage. They're not throwaway. They're just part of the next project or could be other parts of other albums. I mean, it all depends on what songs make sense together.
See, and that's exactly what I was thinking as he was showing me the songs. Um, I looked at the length of the songs. I looked at what was going to be the length of the album, and you know, nowadays because of with streaming and everything, uh, some people don't really consider the amount of time that an album takes. But in the old days, tapes, record players, and CDs kind of forced us to 74 minutes or less. And because of that, there's this kind of mentality that like if this album's 2 hours long, then technically you got a double album there. It's not
Exactly.
one.
And it might make more sense as a double album or something like that. And even in the greatest hits category there, I want to say it was, I think it was Buffett that had like a 4 CD greatest hits where it was like bars, beaches, boats, and ballads or something, where it was like each CD, this one was all songs about bars. This one's all songs about boats. This one's all songs about beaches, whatever. Like, there was at least something to tie all the songs together. And considering that, his songs all had a very similar focus, it was easy to come up with a whole album worth of songs that are all focused on one thing from his catalog. So, something like that makes sense for, putting things together too.
And he actually has that many hits. It's not like some of those greatest hits albums where there's really only 2 or 3 songs that were greatest hits and they just kind of filled the rest of it.
Yeah. But again, certain albums like, I mean, the one that I always come back to is
Eagles' greatest hits.
Yep. I mean, when it comes to greatest hits albums, sure, I was coming back to an album like Pink Floyd Animals, where there's not a lot of songs on that album. It's a short album in terms of the number of songs, but they're all, animal related songs because they all fit together in that way. And when you listen to it as an album, I mean, it is something where you can sit down and listen to the whole thing, and it all kind of, it's not all the same story. It is all independent songs, but the whole thing does have a flow to it,
Yeah. Pink Floyd is my favorite band when it comes to concept albums. They wrote The Wall, to me, is the ultimate concept album.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Queensryche Operation Mindcrime is number 2.
Nice. Yeah, good choices.
So let's take a look and see what we've got for tonight. And like I said, the concept album will be discussed along the way.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see. Flip me around. Okay, so to start, Zane over at Audio Tech TV, audiotech.tv.com. You can visit the mothership, one of our channels where, regardless of whether we're talking mixing and audio gear, or in this case, singles versus EPs versus albums, what's the difference? And I wanted to start there so that we can separate, like, an EP, yes, it's an album, but it serves a different purpose than a full-blown album. And tonight we're really going to focus on the full-blown album and what it takes to construct it.
Yeah, and that's another one, whether it's EP or a press kit, and there's a number of different things we can bring up at another, during another episode to check out, other things to get together for your band other than an album.
Yeah, and marketing and things like that will be also in here tonight.
Oh, yeah.
So after we establish, what is the difference between like a single, an EP, and an album, Daily Ginger, I like this video because he covers the things to think about before going in and, establishing, like, what are we actually going to be doing here for this album? Why are we doing it? How are we going to do it? All the important questions. He does a good job of asking the 5 questions you should ask.
Nice.
And we got a theme going with 5 here, because with J Maniac, we're going to look at the 5 levels of concept albums. And, everything from a simple concept to The Wall and like, an album that actually the whole song structure is a concept.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I wanted to include that one because you know, we're doing an interview with Eremos Dax. He's coming out with a double album. Uh, I think this week, maybe next week.
Very cool.
And when he initially explained it to me, you know, the first album is uh, the mental. The two albums, one is mental and one is physical. And when I heard that, I said, "Oh, I love that concept." And he said, "It's not a concept album." But me thinking like you're making a double album and one's going to be physical and one's going to be mental, that is technically a concept. So
sure.
It may not be like necessarily concept album in song structure, but making a double album like that is a concept album.
Mm-hmm. And also it could have been just looked at as a way to categorize the songs, you know, like these all belong together and these all belong together in some way, you know, in his way of organizing them too.
Yeah, and knowing how Eremos is, they will likely tie to each other in some form of theme because every album he makes does have a theme. And that's where concept albums really come from.
Exactly.
Oh, and I see some good ones in this.
Yeah.
Love that Iron Maiden one.
Yeah, nice.
And then after we establish, you know, all of this, how do you go into it? And what's the perfect way to start an album? That initial song or where you put that hit song that you're going to be pushing, where it goes in the album. In the old days, a lot of this did matter. It's not as important nowadays because people will click on whichever one they want, and even with CDs, it kind of became like I'm jumping to track 5. But I think it is important to think about like how you introduce the album, especially if it's your first album, because for those who have never made an album before and you're doing your first album, that's an important album. That's the one that introduces you to the world, and you really only get one chance to make a first impression.
Yeah, and to me, it's kind of like the you want to go start writing a novel, and you start by staring at a blank page, right? It's daunting. Like, you know, I got a whole novel to write, and I got to start with the right word to start it. You know, where do I start? And you know, to me, it's more important to get material down. Like, you know, when it comes to if you want to start, you know, planning an album, I would start with the skeletal structure and, you know, the story arc and all that kind of thing. If you're looking at making a story concept album, that kind of a thing. But if it comes to just you're going to be putting together a collection of songs, to me, it's about amassing the songs first and then seeing how the songs dictate the album. Like if you come up with, you know, at least 10 songs, let's say, to start with, and whether they tie together or whether you intended them all to be, you know, the same, you know, thematically or not, once you have 10 or however many, you can start looking at how they all fit together, what order you would put them in, why that makes sense, all of those kinds of things. If you had 20, then you, again, could be making an album of 5. You could be making an album of 12. You know, you could, however many seem to fit together, but you are choosing from a larger variety rather than trying to force together, you know, I made 8 songs and I'm going to put them all on an album because I have 8 songs. You know, like to me, that's, you know, a different way of looking at it. That's more of a greatest hits thing where you're just, you know, these are the songs that I wrote and I'm just going to put them all together, where instead of, you know, these all tie together thematically. That's to me what albums should be.
I think it's a good idea to actually listen to those songs in the order that you want to do it in the album, and see how the album actually flows to you. Test it, like,
and don't be afraid to change them around a little, you know, and okay, what about song 4 going in second place instead, you know, and see how it sounds.
Every once in a while you will get like 2 songs where putting them together, the listener will start to, with a purple umbrella and a 50-cent hat came like right after, and I only know the songs there together. I really, if I hear the first one, I have to hear that after, because,
and if you don't, somebody doesn't know what they're doing, because like that's, you know, those 2 songs do go together. They are and you know, 2 halves of a thing to me. So when I only hear one on the radio, it's like, no, what did you do?
Yeah. I start like I need to go play this whole album now. I need to hear the whole thing.
I'll just play it myself in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to lead from there, Holistic Songwriting, another channel that we've gone to on our songwriting nights, great channel for songwriting advice. They're going to cover album structure and song types,
Nice.
and then pulling that lever, like, the toughest thing with like deciding, okay, I am going to do things this way, and now let's get this album done. And looking at this thumbnail, it is kind of like the way I think of things, like the opener. To me, that first song still matters nowadays, and that opener should lead you into the album. And the single, the banger, like I like how he's naming these, because I think that way when I'm thinking of like, where does this song fit in this album? Is it the filler? And you need to have some fillers on an album. That's
Sure.
You can't make an album of all hits unless it's Appetite for Destruction. That's the one exception, but usually there will be a filler or two.
I love that album.
Yeah, it's one of the best assembled out there. And then Nathan Zed, and I got to give him credit. I almost like just used his videos tonight because he's got so many that cover this topic. And I ended up going with this one because it kind of gets into like the marketing side a little bit, and like, preparing your fans for an album that's going to be coming out, something that a lot of artists don't seem to really think about nowadays. They just, okay, I'm going to release this on this date and my work's done. But
And there's a release party. Yeah, let's go.
well, having a release party is a good way to actually build up some hype and some marketing and motivation. If you don't do anything, unless you got a marketing like crew to do it for you in the categories, then if you don't do anything, the chance of your album's success is going to be limited, because new albums come out every day and most people don't know unless you tell them.
Exactly.
So, really like Nathan Zed's channel, and I wish I could have included some of his other ones, because he really does cover this topic awesome on his channel. But we did manage to get some of the other cool channels in on this one too. And Audio Tech TV, one of my favorites that we have in our list, at Audio Tech TV on YouTube, and he's got audiotech.tv.com. Great resource for everything: reviews, information, tips, tricks, mixing. Zane knows his shit. And Audio Tech TV definitely has taught us a few things on certain nights.
Absolutely.
What he's going to cover here is that difference between singles, EPs, and albums, and they do serve different purposes.
All right.
You might be getting ready to record or release your first single, EP, or album, but what are the differences between a single versus EP versus album? In this video, I'm going to go over what the differences are and how Spotify and even iTunes treat the different releases. I'm Zane. Welcome to Simple Green Tech, where I do weekly audio tech tips, tutorials, and reviews to help you conquer the tech and unleash your creativity. So first, I'm going to go over the basic differences, and then I'll talk about how Spotify and iTunes treat your different releases, or how they categorize them. And first up, what makes a single? A single is 1 to 3 tracks, and the total duration can be no more than 30 minutes, meaning all of your tracks combined can be no longer than 30 minutes. Plus, each of your tracks must be under 10 minutes long. So if even one of those tracks is 10 minutes or longer, then this will make your single an EP on iTunes. Lately, EPs have become very popular to release. They're short enough that you can crank them out quicker when compared to a full-length album, and they also give your listener a bit of a bigger sampling of your music compared to a single. So what makes an EP? Well, to have your release be considered an EP, it must be 4 to 6 tracks and can be no longer than 30 minutes in length. So all of your tracks combined on your EP can be no longer than 30 minutes. If the total running time on either your single or your EP is longer than 30 minutes, then it's going to be considered an album. Now, for years, albums were the primary method for releasing music, but that's changed since artists and musicians now have the ability to crank out more music more often. But there's still something great about releasing a full-length album, even if it has some of your singles that you previously released and maybe you include a couple of new songs, or maybe it's just a collection of a bunch of your singles put together on one album with some new artwork, and you can give a bit of a discount on it. So what makes an album? Well, before I answer that, I just want to ask if you're enjoying this video so far and getting some value out of it, can you please hit the thumbs up button? It really helps my channel out and I appreciate it so much. Now, what makes a full album? Well, it must be 7 tracks or longer, or it could have a total running time, like I said earlier, of 30 minutes or longer. So you could have a 2-track album and your 2 tracks are maybe 15 minutes in length each, and that's an album. Or you could have 8 tracks and each track is under 2 minutes long. So say 16 minutes in total runtime, but you still have 8 tracks and that's still an album. So if you create a lot of progressive music that has longer run times, then you're likely going to be releasing what's considered a full album, even if you have fewer tracks than 7. So what's the difference between a single versus EP versus album on stores like Spotify and iTunes? Well, on iTunes, if you release a single and you don't include the word single in the title, then iTunes may actually add single to the title of your track. Now, if you release a single to Spotify, it doesn't change the name of your track, but it does categorize it in the singles category. And if you release an EP on iTunes and you don't include EP in any of your tracks, then iTunes may actually add EP to all of the track names in that release. If you release an EP on Spotify, it doesn't change the name of your tracks, but it does categorize them in the EP category. Now, if you release an album on iTunes or Spotify, there's no changing in the title. So there are also some pricing differences, and I'm not talking about the price to actually release them. I'm talking about the price that you can charge to your fans. And by default, I think a single is 99 cents per track, but I think you can also change this to 69 cents or $1.29. But if you release an EP or an album, you can still set the tracks to 99 cents each or one of the other options, but you also can give your fans a little bit of an incentive to purchase all of your tracks together by giving a discount on purchasing the entire EP or the entire album. One thing to note is if your individual tracks combined are lesser than the price you set for the album, then it will go with the lesser price for the album. Now I have a question for you. Have you recently released music on iTunes or Spotify and all the other stores, or will you be releasing some music very soon? Let me know down in the comments. Now, if you don't have a distributor for your music yet, I've included a link down in the description to DistroKid. That's who I've been using lately to release my music. And no, this video is not sponsored by DistroKid. It's just I use them and I really enjoy their service. It's easy to use and they get you on all the platforms. You can release as much music as you want anytime you want, and they'll get you on Spotify, iTunes, and all the big platforms. They also get you the Spotify verified artist badge on your Spotify account. Plus, if you use the link down below, you get a 7% discount on their service, which I think is around $20 for the basic service. So be sure to check out that link to DistroKid that's down in the description. Save that money and start releasing your music. I found that by having the DistroKid account, I've started to create more and more music because I can release as much as I want whenever I want. Also, if you get the Musician Plus or the label account on DistroKid, you can release music under different band names. So maybe you have a couple of different projects with different band names. then you can do that. Also, this allows you to change the music label name that you release your music under. So maybe you can start your own record label locally and get some local artists and start releasing their music to Spotify and iTunes and all those places. It's super easy to set up payments for all of your band members and maybe any artists that you collaborate with. And I've actually got a video where I go through the whole upload process on DistroKid, so you can check that out. I'll link to that down in the description as well. So yeah, let me know about any music that you've recently released or are going to be releasing very soon. And if you want to check out that DistroKid video that I did, it should be on the screen right now. You can click on that, or you can click on the other video on the screen to see what YouTube recommends. If you like this video, can you please give it a thumbs up? Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. For Simple Green Tech, I'm Zane. Keep creating, and we'll talk soon.
Oh, and that DistroKid video is useful if you haven't gotten a distributor and you're considering DistroKid. That video is real useful to get to know what you're going to be dealing with.
Yep. And that's the thing is, getting in there, just jump in and do it if you haven't, started looking through these things yet, because you got to do the first one in order to start getting a roll, right?
Yeah. And I found it interesting to hear that, like, iTunes versus was it SoundCloud
Spotify.
he was talking about, Spotify. These music platforms, how they recognize and identify things, renaming your track. See, I'm a little hesitant on that approach. I'd rather say, hey, this is an EP or this is an album. And
that's kind of how I read
leave the titles alone. Let the titles be.
Well, what I took from him saying that was that, okay, well, here's certain rules. Like if it's going to be more than 7 songs, it's going to be an album. So don't worry about it. The titles don't need to be changed. If it is, within those certain parameters and it's going to be single, include yourself, the word single in the titles, because then you are, they're not going to change the name because you already put it in there. And if it's going to be an EP that you're shooting for and you're within those boundaries, then put EP in the title, and then nobody's going to change it again. That way it's going to be consistent across platforms too. That was, to me, the reason to do it is, you put it what it's going to be and you make sure you stay within those guidelines of how many songs and total run length and individual song length. And then no platform has to change anything on what you're releasing.
Yeah. It's good to know going in that this platform's it's going to work this way. Great advice there, Zane. And, technically you could call it an EP, but if it is like an hour long and it does have 12 tracks, you probably shouldn't call it an EP. Otherwise, you are going to confuse some people.
Exactly. Because then you have an album with, stuff that has EP in the track names, and that's, they might change the track names at that point because now it's going against their, naming parameters.
Well, and I'm old school. I expect an EP to be like 30 minutes. The EPs that I grew up with were not full-blown albums. And if all of a sudden I'm listening for an hour, I'm thinking this isn't an EP.
Yeah. Well, Pink Floyd, Adam Hart Mother, going back to Pink Floyd again, is one of my favorites. And the first track is, I want to say 26 minutes. It's either 23 minutes or 26 minutes, but it's very long. And so the entire album is only 5 songs, but it's more than 30 minutes, I'm sure. So it's an album, So
I actually thought of that song when he was talking about the singles, and he said up to 30 minutes because, it's rare that you're going to get a single that's like that. But hey, Pink Floyd did. And
that's one of my favorites. That was one of my meditation songs. I could throw that on anytime and it's going to relax me right out, because that is just such a nice mellow song, and it's a good journey song. It's a song that goes places and different places throughout the entire song. It doesn't just sit there and go through a chord loop for 23 minutes. It actually has a purpose. It has a story. It goes places.
Yeah, and you're not fitting that on a 45.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and again, what I was saying earlier about length of things, it is because of the old days. A 45 dictated your singles had to be this long. If they were longer than that, then you couldn't actually put it on a 45. So something to consider when you're looking at your song lengths. And fortunately, you don't have to worry about that with streaming the way it is nowadays. your song could be an hour long, but you better justify it.
Exactly. And even cassettes, whatever, 45 minutes aside or whatever, we had at a certain point, there were limits, you could make a bigger one, but, the idea was, generally speaking, it was going to be that much space that you had to work with.
Do you remember when they came out with the singles cassettes where
Yeah.
like
There's no tape in there.
the 45, yeah, they were like, but you could get like 5-10 minutes on each side.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was
we're not even going to get into the whole 8-track thing. That's going far enough back where
hey, 8-tracks were ahead of their time. They were the Sony Beta of music.
Exactly.
That was Zane at Audiotech TV. Well worth a visit. You can also go to audiotech.tv.com. He's got a mothership.
Nice.
And that helps us to understand what we're going to be dealing with here tonight, because we're going to be talking albums and the strategy behind making them. Daily Ginger here does a good job of kind of asking the important upfront questions. Whether I'm making an album or somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to make an album, can you help us to put it together and produce it? These are the kinds of questions that I ask when somebody wants to put together, a full-blown album.
One that I would bring up is also instrumentation and overall tone. Like if you have the same 4 instruments in your band and it's the same 4 instruments the whole way through, you'll have some differences in tone between, a really loud and upbeat song and a quieter ballad type song. But overall, like the guitar sounds like the guitar, the bass sounds like the bass. If you just have a collection of songs from, the past 4 years with all different people and all different instrumentation, it won't sound as much like an album because it's all different. You're having all kinds of different things pulled in from everywhere, right? So if you're trying to do, the band and an album that showcases the band, it should sound like the band in each of the songs that's coming out. It doesn't sound the same, but it should sound like them.
Most importantly, it should be consistent across the songs. Like
right.
This is why you want like one studio, one engineer. Well, not necessarily one engineer, but you want the same engineer, engineering and studio, so that the songs sound like they're cohesive.
Right.
It's just like in the mix, you want the instruments to sound like they're in the same room. You don't want them to sound like they're coming from different places. That sounds weird. So your consistency in your album is the make or break of a good album.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's why I really like the idea when you see people that like record in, just a big open room where everybody's in their place. You got the guitars over there, the keyboards over there. Everyone's got their own monitors. So they can get their own mix, of what they need to hear. But each person, that they're in a live setting in terms of they can see all the other bandmates and they're all playing at the same time, so they can feed off of each other. But everybody has their own custom mix in front of them, so they can hear what they need to, so they can hear more of the keys or more of the guitar or whatever to get what they need to get their performance right.
Yeah, as you're doing the recording, I typically tell, especially singers, mute the tracks that you don't necessarily need to hear, that aren't like helping you to actually perform. Just focus on the layers that are helping you to get your performance. If you can minimalize it, you tend to get a better focused performance.
True. The one hesitation with that, and again, it's not something that I would tell them otherwise, but it's something that I would just kind of also advise, is also make sure you listen to it all back in context to make sure that you're not stepping on other parts, because there could be a whole like flute solo going on while you start doing something completely contrasting, and you don't want to do that. So you got to make sure that the hole you're trying to fill in the song with this particular line, and you're making sure that you're filling it properly.
Yeah. So this one's coming from at the Rhinees, Rynee, and it's the Daily Ginger, and he's going to give us 5 things to know before recording, 5 things to ask, to think about if you're going to put together an album.
Nice.
So I want to talk to you guys about 5 things you should know before you start your first album. And this is obviously designed more for people that are doing it independently or have never done it before and just want to get an idea of where to start and what to be thinking about before they proceed with their project. This isn't only stuff that I think people should think about. This is also stuff that I wish I had thought about before I started my first project, because these 5 things would have saved me a ton of time. Okay, so number 1. Number 1 is, how are you going to record your album? Now that seems pretty obvious, but it's something that you need to sit and actually plan out and think about, because when you're doing something as in-depth as recording an album, starting a project like that, you need to sit down, you need to really plan it out and map things out and know exactly how you're going to get from point A to point B. That doesn't mean things aren't going to change along the way, because it always happens. It's never going to go exactly as planned, but as long as you have a pretty structured plan from point A to point B, less stuff will go wrong than if you kind of go in free form, willy-nilly, and you don't know what you're doing. One of the main things to consider when you're thinking about how you're going to complete your album is, where are you going to complete it? Obviously, when you think about recording music, the first option you think about is a recording studio, because that's how you've viewed music probably for a long time, seeing it in movies or TV shows, whatever. People go to recording studios to record music, and that's great. And for some people who can afford it, that might be a good option. That might be the best option for them. But there's other options you can do other than that. I would say option number 2 for where you can record is, find a friend. Do you have a friend that owns a home studio? Do you have a friend that owns recording equipment that's adequate for what you're trying to do? And if the answer is yes, then listen to some of the stuff that they've done and make sure that you're getting involved with someone who knows what they're doing and can create music that sounds good. Because just because someone's a friend doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a good person to start a project with, or it might not mean that they know anything about recording at all. They might just have the equipment. So make sure you're careful with that one. And then the third option I would say is getting your own equipment. That might seem a little bit unrealistic at this early on, but it's something that is doable. It's something that I did a while ago. Most music stores and music websites sell recording packs anywhere from $400 to $800. They'll come with a microphone, monitors, headphones, maybe mic cables, and recording software, and enough stuff that you can record a legitimate piece of music with it. Now, obviously, if you go that route, you're going to have to deal with the learning curve of actually having to learn how to record and produce and everything, and that's going to be really difficult, and expect to spend months to even years just doing that portion of it. So even if you do that, if you buy your own equipment, maybe have a friend around with you that can help you produce, or if you know someone who's produced in the past or has recording experience, having that person around to get you through the initial wave of trouble and the learning curve is gonna help you a lot. So that's the main points for part 1. Number 2. Advice number 2, discovering your sound is very important. And that's another one that sounds very obvious, but this is a super important part of recording and making music, because discovering your sound is a difference between you being happy with your final product and you not being happy with your final product and thinking like, what did I do? This isn't what I want to portray, or this is not what I want people to hear from me. I don't want people to think I've created this. So discovering your sound doesn't necessarily have to happen up front before you've started the process. Discovering your sound is most likely going to happen along the way, unless you're already established. If you already are established, you're probably not going to be watching this video anyways. So the point is, with discovering your sound, you don't need to sit down before you start your process and say, hey, I want to be, I want my music to sound like this, or I want to be a rapper, I want to be an R&B singer, I want to be, folk rock, I want to do rock and roll. Let the process kind of guide you towards what you want to do in music, because some people might want to do one specific genre, but their voice or their attitude or their recording skills or ability for whatever, it might not cater to that genre as well as it might cater to another genre. So just mess around at the beginning, take your time, figure out what you like to do, figure out what sounds good with your voice or what sounds good with your production style. And it's one of those things that you might discover early on. You might discover a weekend. You might already know, or you might not discover for a year in, 2 years in. I know it took me about a year and a half to actually realize what I was trying to do. And on my album, I ended up scrapping more than half the songs because I finally realized, like, oh my God, after all this time, I finally, zeroed in on what I want my sound to be. So when you finally discover what you want your sound to be, it's such a freeing feeling, because then from then on you kind of know, okay, I won't write these type of songs anymore. I'll write them like this, and you have this awakening, and you realize what you're going for. Okay, number 3 is your music really good enough? This sounds kind of mean, and this is another one that's completely obvious. But my point isn't so much, you know, are you not good enough? Like, man, your music stinks, don't do this. My point is, are you ready to do this? Are you ready to start undertaking something as big as recording your own album? Okay, number 4, organization is key. When you start a project, you want to make sure every step of the way you're staying organized, because if you do 3 months of work, 4 months of work, a year of work, and all of a sudden you lose all your files because the files got corrupted in your computer, which is something that has also happened to me, you are going to hate the fact that you didn't take an extra 30 seconds to do a different save as and save a copy to your external drive, or you didn't use a cloud to save your store your stuff separately. It's one of those things, it takes about 30 seconds just to think, okay, am I doing everything the proper way? And that can save you in the long run, that can save you years, months, weeks of time. Number 5, don't second guess yourself. And this sounds kind of contradictory to what I was saying is step number 3, which is your music really good enough? Are you really good enough? But my point with that is you want to assess yourself to ask, hey, am I at this point? But you don't want to doubt yourself. For example, if you're trying out for a varsity basketball team at your high school and you can barely dribble the ball, you're not going to go and you're not going to make the team. So guess what? There's no point of trying out because you can't even dribble yet. So the point is, take the summer, learn how to dribble so that next year when you go back to the team, you can at least dribble and you can shoot. Point being with music is, man, if you can't even play the guitar yet, or dude, you've never written a song, you got to take the time to learn how to play guitar, or learn how to write a song, or learn how to play piano, or learn how to play whatever genre of music, learn how to rap, do it, learn how to make a beat. But once you're there and once you've learned, if you think something sounds good, just go with it, and don't let any of your friends, don't let anybody else say, man, that's crap or that's bullshit, because a lot of times they're saying it from their own opinion, not realizing, oh, other people have their own opinion too, and what might not sound good to one person does sound good to somebody else. So number 5, that's one big thing I had to overcome the last couple years, was do not doubt yourself. My big problem was for singing and vocals. I constantly doubted my vocal sound, my vocal range. I struggled for years with being able to sing properly and get good vocal takes. And then it got to a point and I was like, man, what the hell? I can sing better than a lot of other people I know. Like, why do I keep doubting myself? And then along with that, I discovered a good recording technique, which is, you know, doubling your vocal tracks and verb and how to EQ properly, blah, 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 blah. That's something I'll get into further down the line. But yep, number 5 is just don't doubt yourself. If you think you're good, just go with it, dude. Because guess what? If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to. That's the 5 main things. I'll go over them again. One is, how are you going to record the album? Just make sure you have a plan. You always got to have a plan when you're going into something like recording your own album. That's a huge process. It is. People underestimate it. It's a huge process. You got to have a plan before you do it. 2, discover your sound. Like I said, that won't only happen at the beginning. That'll happen along the way. Don't rush it. I took 2 years to record my album. I've been writing since I was 15. That was almost 10 years ago. And it took me about a year to a year and a half in to really realize, oh my God, this is what the sound is that I was looking for. And I've been writing these other songs and recording them, and I didn't even want to do them anymore, because guess what? I realized I was way past that, and it just wasn't me. So I scrapped a ton of songs. I threw away a ton of work I had done because I knew there was something that was way better. And I don't look back at all. I'm super happy that I did that. And I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made. And it felt kind of weird recording for a year, thinking that, man, I know exactly what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up, you record something new, and you go, no, that's what I want. I don't want that other stuff. And then you scrap it. You still have it. Don't delete it or anything. But you scrap it, and then you move on, and you start focusing on that sound and that process you came up with. 3, like I said, is your music really good enough? That's not me doubting you. That's just saying, are you at the point where you're ready to undertake something as big as making an album? Because when you do stuff by yourself, sometimes you can, you know, overestimate or underestimate the process. So just make sure your plan is, make sure you've practiced, make sure you're ready to do it. 4, organization is key. And 5, don't second guess yourself. So that's really it. These glasses aren't even real, by the way. I just wore them so I'd look smarter and you guys would believe me. But, just kidding. So that's it. That's the 5 main things that I wish somebody had sat down and talked to me about before I had started recording my album, or at least that I wish I had sat down and thought about myself. But you know what? Hindsight's 20/20. I didn't even think of any of these things, and I wouldn't have even been able to comprehend any of these things back when I first started, because it's just not a thought that was going through my head. But yeah, so that's it. I'll be doing new videos soon, so like and subscribe, do the normal stuff, and I hope this helped you, and good luck with everything.
Oh, I like the glasses.
Yeah, glasses are good.
We're gonna need to get Glenn some glasses.
I did get some reading glasses. I don't really need reading glasses. I can see, fine, but I was like, sometimes in low light or very, very tiny print, it's good to have.
Oh, I do need them nowadays. I can't read the phone anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one thing where I could blow the phone up to plenty big, but I really don't need to. My eyes, like I said, I think it's the amount of time that I spend in front of a screen doing, whether it's video games or doing research or whatever. Like I'm always looking at the screen, I'm always reading stuff. So my eyes have gotten a lot better over the years. Where I had glasses, I wore glasses as a kid, I wore contacts as a teenager, and stopped wearing them, 20 years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, but stopped wearing them. My eyes have gotten progressively better since then, where they're not quite perfect at this point, but they are good enough. I can read, at distance, small print, things that people with, they're wearing their glasses and they can't read like the larger version of the stuff that I'm reading the fine print on from a distance. And I'm like, how are you walking around with glasses and not able to see that? That's crazy.
Yeah, me, it's the different monitors. This 4K is helping to get my like eyesight back, but all the different ones, different resolutions, my eyes are constantly readjusting.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I used to do for a while. Is when I had the two screens hooked up at one point, it was the 40-inch TV and the 20-inch flat screen, but they were the distance. The 20-inch was closer. So when I look at them, they look like they're the same size next to each other, but you're focusing much further away when you're looking at the TV than when you're looking at the screen. So it was one where everything looked like it was just two screens of the same size, but you had to change that focus from one to the other. So you couldn't like play a game with two screens and go back and forth, because that would just mess you up big time.
Yeah, that's why I'm going blind.
Yeah, better to try to keep them all at an appropriate distance where they feel like they're the same size.
Yeah. I like his tips here, especially for those who are new to making music and possibly doing their first album. A lot of his advice is solid. I'm glad he didn't rush. Like I see a lot of artists nowadays who are they feel pressured to like got to keep putting stuff out, and I got to make an album every month, and if you're not considering some of these things that he mentioned here, like finding your sound, knowing what your sound really that you're trying to get, which sometimes we think we know our sound, but if you're working in a vacuum, like he mentioned, like if you're doing it all yourself and you're not bouncing it off of other people, you might be fooling yourself into thinking that your sound is something that you have to talk to others. You have to throw it at other ears to see what they think. The audience picks your style. The audience decides like what you're doing more than you.
True. At the same time, like you were saying, you have to be free to experiment with different things. Like maybe all of a sudden you need to do a country album, even though you've never done country before in your life. And you start doing a country song and you find that you really enjoy it and you find that people really respond to it. And all of a sudden you get a hat and boom, you're a country star. I mean, that kind of thing can happen where, even if you've never heard a country song before, it can just, you could get bit one day by something like that. It doesn't have to be country. It could be salsa. It could be whatever. I mean, just something that you haven't considered even, might be your sound. So don't be afraid to experiment, but it doesn't have to all be, on an album. So again, what is the objective of the album is kind of, where it comes from too. Are you releasing this just so you have something to be able to say, hey, I did this and I'm putting it out there to the world? Or are you trying to make money with this? Or are you trying to build on this to make, a catalog? It depends on what you're looking to do with this as well. So look at it that way. Like to me also kind of documenting your way through your career, right? I mean, if you're planning on releasing albums going forward, you're releasing this one, you're going to be releasing one after that. So the one you release after that should, represent the lessons you've learned from and since.
Your album should grow. Your sound should grow and evolve as you make more.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, it can also grow different directions. Like, you've seen people who, they take a career that goes this way and then all of a sudden they start releasing solo work that goes a completely different way, but they still keep doing the main thing, like they don't have to choose one and abandon the other. They can, split their energy and do different things.
Yeah, I like that he complemented that advice with also like, listen to your friends, listen to those that you are throwing stuff at, but at the same time, don't let it stop you. Don't let it hinder if you really are deadlocked on what you're trying to do. Don't let it like interfere with your goals.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the objective of the album, is this, just getting it out there just so that it's there, or are you trying to build something out of this? Is this, for monetary, gain? I mean, there's a lot of different things to look at
Yeah.
because a lot of people, they would love for an album to, get the record deal and get the millions of dollars from the album. I mean, that's a lot of them look at that as the end game. Like they say, oh, I'm going to make an album and that's going to make me rich or whatever. So like, having that as the
The
objective is
ones who
not really that.
the ones who are doing it because they want to get rich are the ones that have the rudest awakening, because nowadays it's hard to get rich selling albums. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you have the marketing powerhouses to like push it, um, albums aren't going to make you rich. They'll show your accomplishments musically, and with like what we see on the BandLab platform, it's so easy to take a bunch of projects
Trying to
and
make. Mhm.
call it an album.
Yeah.
Hey. uh,
Bouncy bounce.
I'm on top
Yeah, there you go.
of the world.
And it is important. I mean, it's one of those things where, albums are great. Albums are a good way to show growth, as we're saying. And it's one of those things where, try to put everything into it and try to, demonstrate your growth from one to the next so that, whether it's in a direction towards a different style or whether it's all in your wheelhouse, certain bands, you hear the beginning of a song you've never heard before and you can immediately say, oh, I recognize that band because you know that guitar tone, you recognize certain things. If somebody has a sound like that in your band and you have that kind of, signature tone, signature sound, then whatever you're putting out in different styles would still sound like you because you still have that signature tone, right?
Hey, or if you got that singer that's like Axl Rose, where nobody sounds like that.
Exactly. As soon as he opens his mouth, yeah, I know who that is. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And that should be part of your objective when you are collecting songs together to make into an album. If you can make that kind of identity for yourself that way, where people hear your stuff and they know like it's you. A good example would be like Cole Seth or Mavi. Like when I hear their work, I know it's their work. They stamp it with their sound.
Exactly. Another thing about a first album is if you have a 4-piece band, let's say, I would want at least one song to highlight each of the band members, right? Like I would want, I mean, not necessarily a big old, bass solo in this song and a big old guitar solo in this song, whatever, but a song that really highlights or showcases that particular, band member. I think it's a good idea to have it so that, each band member has a song that is kind of like their spotlight, let's say. And it doesn't have to be, everybody on every song, but it's one of those things where there should be something that stands out on the album for each person.
Yeah, and Frank makes a good point that when it comes to making money these days in music, yes, it's the merch, and it's the third party approach that actually brings in revenue more than album sales or single sales. It's not to say that it can't happen that way, but you can't go into it expecting like, wow, this is the best song I ever wrote. I should be able to sell 1 million singles of this. You got to be realistic with what you're dealing with on the internet.
Yeah, and music purchasing has changed a lot over the decades. So, I mean, I wouldn't even pretend to know like what exactly is going on with it, with releasing something today, right now, because I haven't released anything anytime recently. So it's one of those things where we need to do the investigation and make sure to, listen to the advice of the people who are putting the stuff out regularly.
Yeah, a lot of times nowadays, if your fans are buying your singles or buying your albums, they're not doing it to access the material. They're doing it to support the artist, and they want that artist to make more music. Because sadly, thanks to YouTube, if you really want to hear a song, it's out there. But if you really want to hear that artist make another song, then you gotta support artists to have them continue to make songs.
Yeah. And if these are artists that are playing live somewhere, supporting them by going and seeing them live is great. Showing your support where they're actually able to interact with you. That's great stuff. Not every band is looking for that. Some bands just want to release stuff and stay internet, secured, or kind of boundaries there where they just do the music, release it to the internet, and they don't actually do live shows. It depends. Again, it depends on your situation, what you want to do with the band that you're working with.
I think nowadays a band that takes the like Patreon approach, or a form of subscription for exclusive access and possible benefits, um, things like Patreon. It, a band that's really active, especially if they are playing out, touring, if they're getting out there, and they provide incentives through premium membership, like through a Patreon. A band like that can go far nowadays and actually take care of at least paying the bills.
Exactly. And that's the important thing, managing to cover what you need to get to the next show.
Yeah, well, that was good advice, especially for those who are starting out. Like he mentioned, like if you don't have the equipment and you really want to make an album and you're going into a studio, then the other tips he mentioned, you really want to have your ducks in a row before you go in a studio and spend money to have them put together things for you. Maybe sometimes getting the equipment, like he suggested, can be a good idea, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody's gonna want to put in the time to learn how to mix and engineer themselves. So you really got to ask yourself these things before you go making that album. Put some thought into it.
Yeah. And scheduling the studio time. Again, we've talked about how some people, they would schedule a studio time and go in, expecting to record an album, but then go in there and they're basically just still learning the songs, like nobody, like, oh, this guy doesn't know the parts at all. This guy's, reading the words off the page and kind of doesn't know.
And if you're the engineer in that studio, it's like, you know what? Practice alls you want. You're still paying $200 an hour, and you should have learned this shit before you came in, because it would be a lot cheaper to record this song if you didn't have to practice it.
And at the end of this session, you're not going to have anything that you can release as anything, because at the end of the session, you're going to have a well-recorded practice session that's perfectly mixed with all of your mistakes in it and all of his mistakes in it, and with him learning his part in the wrong key.
Well, once in a while, you'll get a happy accident. It'll be like, wow, this is so natural.
We got 8 seconds that we can make into a demo right here. Boom.
8 seconds are forever. DJ T just wrote a song about it.
There it is. It's all you need. 8 seconds. Get famous.
Yep. So that was at the Rhineys, EEE, RYNEEE on YouTube. But good advice, especially if you are starting out. These are the things to consider. And I did want to get to the concept album, because this is a special kind of album for me. It's one that I haven't personally gotten to do yet. Like, there's been a few times that I considered making a concept album, but I didn't have enough of a concept to like justify like calling it a concept album.
All right.
And this one's coming from J Maniac at J Maniac over on YouTube. And we have more on this channel. It's a freshie for us, but he's covering the topic that I wanted to talk about tonight. And wow, why Wormed has the best premise I've ever. I'm gonna have to come back here and see some of this shit you got here. This is interesting. And that's the nice thing about like some of our explorations. Like, we find some freshies that, who knows, I might cover that on our next topic.
Opens whole new wormholes.
Yeah, but with the concept album, I've got a few of mine that like my favorites, and the kinds of albums I would love to write. I would love to make The Wall Part 2.
Nice.
I just need a couple more years to write it.
Yeah. And that was another one, like a song like Wish You Were Here, parts, what, 1 through 95?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those that, bunch of different parts, but the song keeps tying back together. So to me, that's another one where it really, brings things together.
Well, and that reminds me of like classical music approaches where you got a motif and a theme musically that like comes back in on the third movement.
Exactly. Something that, reminds you of, that other part before. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're going to see what the 5 levels of concept album are, from a simple concept to the wall.
All right. Let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I love music, like, a lot. I play guitar, piano, and sing. I go to concerts, I jam with my friends, I listen to music all the time. Hell, I'm listening to it right now as I script this. But as much as I love music, I don't love it quite as much as stories. I love reading stories, watching stories, or even listening to them, which is why a lot of my favorite albums tend to be concept albums, with some notable exceptions. Here's the thing, what does a concept album really entail? I know, it's one of those annoying questions that your philosophy teacher asks in normal conversation. But this one in particular got me thinking, because I do refer to the concept of an album, even when it's not a quote-unquote concept album. And almost every album will have things that tie its ideas together, if only because the songs were probably written at around the same time. I like to put it on a spectrum from concept album to not concept album. I took a quiz that might be bullshit, and it said that I'm a perceiver rather than a judger, meaning that I like things to exist on planes of nuance rather than in segmented boxes. And I define myself by that because the quiz told me to. So let's lay out that spectrum and see where our favorite albums land. The scale's gonna be 0 to 5, making for 5 levels of concept running through. If you like things in boxes, this is just more boxes, 6 instead of 2. If you like things on a spectrum, you can put an album at 3.2 on a scale, or 4.006 if you really want. A couple disclaimers. My definition of a concept is essentially a story told throughout an album, which might be different from yours. I put some things you might call concept albums very low on my spectrum. This is also not an indication as to how good any of these albums are. That has absolutely nothing to do with the spectrum. How connected an album is doesn't bear on how good it sounds, and how connected we want it to be is just a matter of preference. Cool? Cool. For examples, I'll just be using my personal library, since I don't feel comfortable making judgment calls on albums I haven't really listened to. Hope we like the same music! At level 0, we have absolutely no concept at all. The tracks mainly exist on their own and come together pretty much circumstantially. And if there's a concept that's similar between 1 or 2 tracks, it's purely coincidence. The ideas of the album are all over the place, the only limit being the band's focus. Unsurprisingly, I don't listen to very many zeros, so I actually had trouble coming up with albums for an example. The most pure zero I can think of would be a greatest hits album, like God's Favorite Band, because it's literally just a collection of singles and hits from other albums. Some other maybe lighter zeros would be Divide by Ed Sheeran, Ocean Eyes by Owl City, which I've been listening to since 7th grade and still haven't pulled anything out of as a whole. Native by One Republic, Conventional Weapons if you consider that an album in the first place, and most of Panic at the Disco's repertoire, with one exception. At level 1 we have the beginnings of a concept, a little something that it's going for as a whole. Individual tracks are probably still wildly different and seem to be thrown in with the rest, but at least there was a mission statement or something. I think that a lot of albums like this are written almost accidentally, just because something was on the writer's mind as they put it together, and then they realized that and just kind of rolled with it. I'd put things like Talking is Hard and What If Nothing by Walk the Moon, Bastille's All This Bad Blood, and most of Weezer's stuff here. The other option for an album like this would be there's a concept, but none of the tracks really tie that concept in a story-like way, leading to a bunch of disconnected songs. I put Pretty Odd by Panic here because they had the idea, but the tracks weren't really connected with regards to lyrical ideas. Speaking of the Beatles, I'm also going to put Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band here, which might require some explanation. I said earlier that a concept that's based around the band's sound and lyrical style couldn't count, because then every album would be a concept album. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was written as the Beatles' alter egos, and stands as a self-titled record by those fictional characters. It gets to be at level 1 because those characters are fictional, but they didn't really tell a story. They had the beginning of the story, the premise, but they used it to make a bunch of songs instead of a concept album. That's a fine choice, and I loved it, but it's not making it higher on the spectrum because of it. Level 2. The concept is a set thing, and general themes run throughout the album. Maybe it examines one issue or event from a bunch of different angles, or maybe it was all written in one sitting, fueled by what's going on in the writer's life. Whatever the case, it's a concept and it's present. The only thing keeping it from being higher on the list is a general lack of flow between the tracks. Yes, they're all tied to this one thing, but they aren't all really tied to each other very much. It's a concept album like you and your friend's friend are friends. Examples of this kind of album would include Paramore's After Laughter or Bastille's Good Grief. They're tied to ideas and examine those concepts, entering adulthood and the disastrous political and media climate respectively, but you could hit shuffle for the same effect. It's really that part which defines the first half of the scale. The order in which you get the songs isn't a fundamental part of how the album is appreciated. But here we cross that line. Well, to put it in perceiver terms, we kind of cross that line. On level 3, there are at least a few tracks that lead the listener down a specific path and tell a cohesive story. The reason it's not higher, then, is because maybe not all of the tracks do that, or maybe they're all tied to the first track and last track, but not tied to each other in a really meaningful way. 21 Pilots seems to follow this kind of structure. I think I'd put Vessel between levels 2 and 3, but Blurry Face is certainly level 3 stuff. It introduces the album's conflict in Heavy Dirty Soul, and the lead character of Blurry Face in Stressed Out. While all the other songs fit with the themes and ideas, you could totally shift them around without consequence. The concept comes back with the ending track, Goner, and maybe Not Today, the one immediately before it. John Bellion's The Human Condition starts with He Is the Same, which introduces the conflict. The rest of the songs explore the aspects of that journey, but not in a really sequential way. Hand of God wraps it all up in a grand overture-like fashion. I'm not saying all albums on level 3 are defined by their closers and openers, with the rest fitting a theme, but it's certainly a trend. I mean, look at, well, I don't know, Revolution Radio. It's all about revolution and political upheaval. Its tracks follow the theme, and the tracks Somewhere Now and Forever Now are counterparts, bouncing off each other and making the album seem like a complete narrative. Basically, giving a beginning and end to a level 2 makes it a level 3. Not saying that's the only way to get there, but it's certainly a respectable and recognizable modus operandi. Now, here's the thing about level 4. It totally breaks pattern, but I've got to include it. Level 4 is almost its own category, but if I'm ranking any album in terms of concept story, I've got to put it somewhere, and this is the perfect place. On level 4, we have accompanying pieces. These are movie soundtracks, game soundtracks, or songs from musicals. Anyone who's downloaded The Greatest Showman or Dear Evan Hansen, this is your slot. In a musical, the songs are perfectly sequential, push running themes, and have a clear beginning and end, which would normally make it a 5. The only problem, then, is that it relies on another medium to tell its story, and no matter how well the songs tell the story on their own, the fact that there's stuff like non-musical dialogue in the rest of the play renders it a 4. I don't care if you think an album like American Idiot doesn't tell as clear a story as the Be More Chill album does on its own. The fact that the whole story isn't the album disqualifies it for the most part. Hamilton, with all of its dialogue as part of the music, is a toss-up. It could go either way, depending on how important you think the visuals are. It's different for something like Jesus Christ Superstar, which, while turned into a play, was conceptualized to work as just an album.
Thrilled the White House called me tonight because I'm actually working on a hip-hop album. It's a concept album.
A 4 is basically a 5, but knocked down for one reason or another. This is just one specific reason that a 4 might exist, and there are others. For example, I'd say Logic's Incredible True Story is a 4, with tracks being conceptually tied and a parallel space opera running through some of them. Level 5, we're finally here. I don't know where you prefer your albums to sit. Some people don't want to bother with an idea at all, or some might prefer the vague story of Blurry Face, but level 5 is where a lot of my personal favorites sit. The requirement to be considered level 5? Each track leads into the next thematically to form a single narrative, the epitome of what we've been working up to. I think one of the best examples of a 5 that I can give goes to Astoria by my favorite band, Mariana's Trench, where the tracks tell a series of events and states of being in the lead singer Josh Ramsey's life, in chronological order, with no outliers, and the closing track, End of an Era, mirroring the opener in a climactic finish. In fact, Mariana's Trench's past 3 albums have all been 5s on this scale. There's another band with a reputation for storytelling in their albums. They wear a lot of eyeliner, one of them had red hair, they wrote a bunch of rock operas. It was Green Day! 21st Century Breakdown fits a 5 perfectly, as does... Yeah, okay, fine. I can't go through this without talking about my other favorite band. All 4 My Chemical Romance albums are 5s, though maybe not perfect 5s. Black Parade has Teenagers, which bumps it down slightly since that one is a stretch to tie back to the concept. Danger Days let itself end on vampire money and may have relied on other mediums to tell its story, etc. The best 5 from them, I think, is probably 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, even if pacing was a bit weird with that one. No, but the absolute strongest 5 I can possibly give has to be Splendor and Misery by Clipping. Oh my god, what a fantastic cut all around. It goes balls to the wall with its story, to the point where the individual tracks almost don't make any sense at all without the rest of the album. Oh my god, it's just fantastic. A reminder, just because a concept album you liked didn't get a 5 doesn't mean I don't like it, obviously. Every album goes for different things and ends up with different things, and that's absolutely fine. I can come up with albums I love from each of these categories. Conversely, someone might ding the perfect 5, Splendor and Misery, for its overcommitment to the concept. I wouldn't, but someone would. So that's my scale. Hope you liked it. If not, tell me what you didn't in the comments. Is my method a bad one, or did I just fail to present it well? I think that regardless of whether you think it applies to what a concept album is, it's a pretty handy scale for organizing your thoughts, or at least it helped me. It's not just limited to albums either. You could take entire bands or something not even music related. What placing would you give the Marvel Cinematic Universe on this scale, treating movies as individual songs? Or collections of essays like Slouching Towards Bethlehem? Who knows what else we could use this framework to talk about? I look forward to seeing your thoughts on the matter. Again, I'm Jay, and I'll see you later. Rock on, guys.
Oh, rock on, Jay.
Yes, indeed.
And I do like his scale, and interesting his thoughts on the musicals and the soundtracks at the level 4. I really hadn't thought about those in a concept album kind of way, but he's right. Like, they are concept albums. I just never connected that.
Yeah. And again, by, knocking them down because they rely on a different medium, for example,
Yeah.
excuse me, I think that makes sense, to have it so that they're not, the fives should be the ones that are the pure concept albums that are, up there for the reason that they do, tell that whole story. They have the full arc going through. They lead into each other, that whole type of thing.
Well, and it's nice to have that extra medium to complement the concept. But again, I go back to The Wall. It started as an album and then became like, the visual media that it became, which is part of the reason why I completely love it. But I can still listen to the album without the movie, and it's just as good.
Exactly. And not just because you saw it as a movie either. Like, it would have been just as good if it was just the music, even without the movie, in general.
Yeah. For a concept album, the thing that I loved about it was the sequential story. Like, I can't listen to Pink Floyd The Wall randomly. I have to listen to it sequentially because everything leads to everything else.
Exactly. And that's one thing where, it used to be where, I had, a huge music collection on my computer, and I would just basically grab individual bands. So I would just be like, Pink Floyd and grab, 182 songs or whatever, and, Led Zeppelin and grab like 100 songs or whatever, and just put them all into a mix and then, hit shuffle. But that's what kept happening is I would keep getting, a Wall song, and it doesn't go to the next song. And you're like, so I actually took the Wall out. And then at certain times I would just go play the Wall as a full album instead.
See, thank God I only had a tape deck in my my Monte Carlo, because like I had to take the tape out and put in another one. There was no randomness. Like The Wall was in my tape deck for like a good decade.
Yeah, for me it was the Riviera, and it was Pink Floyd Animals on one side and Metal. Meddle, Metal, Pink Floyd Metal on the other side.
Yeah.
And that was in the car. And if I was in the car and the car was on, then that's what was playing, because I never had the radio on. It was always that tape, and it was just going for, like you said, years.
Now his thoughts on bands as a concept, because My Chemical Romance, interesting that he had them up there. They are like a concept band more than like the albums themselves. Panic at the Disco, another one where like the whole concept of the music this band makes is actually the concept.
Exactly.
Would,
And
would you
that's
call would you call the Grateful Dead a concept band?
well, it depends if we're talking about albums again, because a lot of times, and somebody like the Grateful Dead, a lot of it was more about the live experience than it was about the albums. So it's not really the same kind of. It wasn't really what they were going for at the time,
But
really. I mean,
but they are groove rock,
oh yeah,
and in being so, and like at a time where y- it's not like there was a ton of Grateful Deads out there. They really stood out during that time because they were that jam band that the few other jam bands eventually like said we're gonna do it like they do it.
and that's the thing is if you look at all of the because there was a whole tape recording people who would record shows and trade tapes and all that kind of thing. That was a whole thing that they had going on, which was fine. Like the band was fine with it, everything was fine with it. The main thing is that everybody had all the different shows, so it was about the order the songs were played. It was about which was a particular standout version of a particular song, because some song somebody might be like, yeah, I was never crazy about that song, but then they hear one version of it from one particular recording from one particular day. One that jumps out at me is called "He's Gone," and this is a song that's a very powerful song. It's very, it's a sad song, right? It's about he's gone, somebody who's passed away. So it's very powerful, and sometimes they played it at a time or in honor of a particular person because somebody in particular passed away, and you can feel, something genuinely more sad about the song on that particular day. So something like that, where there's a particular tie-in for a particular song like that, but as far as albums go, I'm not really as sure because I never really looked at albums as much from the Grateful Dead. But Europe '72, and that's one particular set of shows that was just incredible. And Live Without a Net is a 2 CD set. That's the one that's in my CD player right now.
I know the one you're talking about there.
That recording is like I could hop in the car and pop to Eyes of the World anytime and just love. That's another one. It's not 23 minutes. But it's a longer song and it's just phenomenal. The whole thing. Some great solos in there. What a wonderful song. And that's one of those that I also like to play. So like that's one of those that my buddy Mike and I have played that as just a duo where he's playing guitar and singing and I'm playing the bass, and it's one of those that always jumps out, and it's fun to play, it's fun to hear, and it comes across very well in different size mediums, like full band versus just a couple people, for example.
Yeah, they definitely were unique. That like their live shows and the arrangements, the choices of which songs they played were as special as albums. So like one of the few rare bands that like every live recording you can get your hands on is special.
Yeah. And, again, that's one where you start to really appreciate it. Like when I tried to reproduce one of the songs where I just, it's a song that I'd listened to a bunch of different times and I just wanted to give it a try. So I sat there and with the bass and just play along, record myself playing bass, have that as a layer. And then I came through and did like a rhythm guitar layer, listening to the little chirp chords that I'm hearing as it's going through, and made that a layer. And then I hear a keyboard layer that's mostly just chords, more like a piano sound, put that on there. And then you hear the other keyboard that's more of an organ sound. So like you're realizing that with each of these layers as you're going through, and then that guitar layer that's not doing the chords and it's not a full lead, but it's just little like just little little bits that are getting thrown in here and there, trying to figure out those parts. I call those the Bob parts, because those are like, that's Bob Weir throwing little guitar things in there that
Accents.
are not the full Jerry leads and not the the chord stuff that needs to hold everything down rhythm wise, but just the little phrases here and there that somebody sings a line and then you throw a little 3-4 note phrase in there just to carry us to the next bit, that kind of thing. So when you realize all those layers, when you start putting all those layers together and you realize, this one and the different textures that they all have, then when you put them all together, all of a sudden it sounds like a really full song. And then you realize that that's only like 6 layers that I put together there, but it sounds really full now because each one has a job and they all were doing it so well in the source material I was listening to.
Recreating a dead song. You are a trooper.
And again, it was I was just doing it for myself. It was just hey, I just wanted to practice the recording techniques and try to again focus in practice with the ear, listening in. The bass is easy to pick out because it's in its own register, right? So you start there, and then once you've got that as a foundation, I realized after I had the bass, one keyboard layer, one guitar layer, I was able to basically, get the original song out of there and just build the rest of the layers based on those, and the drums was also tricky because, trying to get the timing after the
Based
fact.
on, no pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Base it on that. But it is fun to
You
like go
really meant
through.
that literally.
It is fun to go through and do a project like that because you're testing, you're practicing all the recording techniques, both from the keyboard, multiple ways, and from the guitar and from the bass, getting all those layers. I even did a couple layers of vocals on there, main vocals, backing vocals, all that kind of thing. So I was going through all the steps of making sure I was covering all the different layers to see, and to practice mixing and all that stuff. So it's a really good source to just jump in and do for that stuff.
Covering all your bases.
Covering all the bases.
Literally. And the keyboards. And the guitars.
And it's a cover. So you're not trying to write, a symphony from scratch, looking at a blank piece of paper. It's a song that I already love so much. It's a song that I've heard 1,000 times and that I love listening to every time I hear it. So trying to reproduce it is something where, I can sit down and I can just sit there and fall into, a groove that just flows along with the whole thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I get a layer down and get it right enough where it feels right sections and everything else. And then by the time you've got 2, 3, 4 layers built, then going back and putting the rest of the layers on is easier without the rest of the source material in there.
Understanding the concepts of some of those layers and why they make the sound that they do helps you to make unique new sounds too.
Exactly. And new respect for all the different positions in the band also, because if you've always just been the bass player, realizing what the chirp chord player is doing all day, if he's just playing those little, chop, 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 little stuff like that all day. I mean, it's not as exciting necessarily, but it's an important part of the song. It's in there. It's part of the texture.
Honestly, I could chugga 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 all day. That's my favorite kind of guitar playing.
Exactly. And that's the thing is knowing your place, knowing not your place, but knowing the place that you're trying to fill in the song is important. Which job you are. Like, you don't want the guy who's doing the chugga chugga all of a sudden just go, like in the middle of nowhere for no reason. There's a reason that he's just doing this little part over here. That's part of what he's doing.
I wasn't expecting the chugga chugga guy to all of a sudden do a lead solo.
he hit the whole shit pedal. He hit the
Well, I did like your choices there, and you got a cool music collection, Jay. Very interesting analysis on concept album and giving them levels like that. I like that. Because not all concept albums are created equal. And when Aeramo said it's not a concept album, and based on these levels, it is.
And again, that's where it's good to break it down like that to see, where it fits on that spectrum. I would see it more as the spectrum than the boxes because I'm more of a spectrum kind of guy.
I would see it on the level 2-ish based on how he was building up the levels. Like, when you're hitting level 3 that now there is actual concept going on, at least with a couple of the songs, not necessarily the whole album.
Cohesion. Yeah. And again, the randomized test that you were mentioning, like, if you took the wall and listened to it and you hit the random button, it's not going to sound right. And if you listen to it in order, it sounds right. And that's one that you can do as a test for something.
It's possible if I had never heard the wall that I could listen to random tracks and somehow like get them to glue in my brain. But if I'm hearing the Trial of the Worms at the beginning, I'm going to be like, what the fuck's going on in this story?
That's exactly where I was going with that. Yeah.
And Comfortably Numb was strategically in the best spot it could be. Hey, we're on side 2 and one song and then Comfortably Numb.
And that was my favorite. I mean, it's still one of my favorite songs, but that was my favorite song for probably 20 or 30 years. Like, I would have told you hands down, Comfortably Numb favorite song. Just anytime I heard that, I was like, yes.
Yeah. And I really love the acoustic work throughout. couple of different acoustic pieces in that album that are just incredible.
Absolutely.
So at J Maniac, love the levels and love the idea of grading that way.
Indeed.
You might have converted me.
Mhm.
But now if we know what these albums are, we know what concept albums could possibly be, and whether you really want to write a concept album or you're just trying to get a bunch of songs together, what is the way to start? And Alpha Media, another freshie.
Mhm.
We're hitting up some new territory at Alpha Media over on YouTube. And, Harrison making videos and he discusses indie music, hip hop, and a few other things. All right. Indie night will be, we will be having an indie night because a lot of these artists that we deal with, they're indie artists. That makes up the majority of them out there. So,
Yeah.
and when I'm dealing with them, I ask myself this question too, like, what's the perfect way to start an album?
And again, you're thinking back to the way to start a book. Like, is it the starting with a table of contents, figuring out a rough sketching outline of the entire story arc, and then going through and filling in characters and themes and all that? Or is it better to just start with songs and then build from those songs and then try to, cobble together and see what makes sense to put with what once you have a bunch of stuff together?
Yeah, well, and it was like what he mentioned in the previous video, where like, making an album, your concept may change a year and a half later, and if you're still in the middle of making the album, and all of a sudden you're coming up with a concept, and like sometimes you will steer in different directions as you develop the album.
Exactly.
But going in, um, I thought like you, like if I was writing a book, a novelist, you have a certain strategy when you start the story. If we're making a concept album, I'd want that kind of strategy. But if I'm just making an album to show like, hey, I play piano and I got a bunch of piano pieces, do I want that song that's gonna like high energy, bring them in, or do I want to start with something that's more of an intro, tease a little bit, and build up into just like a song progresses, a good album progresses as well.
Some of the songs that I liked on piano, learning classical piano as a kid, that I really liked were the variations on the theme, as you mentioned before. Like one was, I think it was like 13 different variations on
Bach.
one simple theme. There were a few
Bach
of them.
was my jam when it came to the variations on a theme, especially the fugues and like all the stuff that he wrote for his nephew, or one of the million music kids that he had.
Nice. Yeah. And then, again, all of those that have the themes, like revisiting that theme or hearing that theme revisited in a different way, was always cool. Yeah. And some of those, they would have like a very energetic one and a very slow one, and one that's more, with the pedal and doom, 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 bringing these like, long dragging notes. And then the next one is like all staccato. So they really were covering a lot of different styles and a lot of different types of music, even in just, to contrast just within this one piece, which is one thing I liked about it a lot.
Yeah. Learning those variations the way that I did helped me to find like 5 different ways to play in D minor. Like, there's not just one way, and it sucks when you get stuck in a key where the only thing you do is always the same thing. Practicing those variations helps you to get out of that scale box.
For me, the one big piece of advice I would give for that is sus2 and sus4. Just being ready to throw in a sus2 and a sus4, and bouncing the 2, the 3, and the 4 like all through there is something that can add variation without really drastically changing what you're listening to.
I know you want me to go a half step up or down, and I've heard you say on the 7ths and the 9ths as well.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing, is it's all about exploring things in ways that make sense. But that's where also we've talked about before about jazz, a little bit off topic, but talking about where to start in jazz. We're saying if you wanted to start out in jazz, you would start with like these 10 songs, for example, or even these 3 songs, because the first ones you're going to learn are going to teach you some very basic blocks that you're going to need to build upon with everything else that you're going to do. And by learning these 10 songs first, for example, you're covering, 90% of the theory, at least, that you're going to need to understand going forward when it comes to 7s and 9s and sharp 13s and all that good stuff.
Yeah. If I'm going to try to write a jazz song, I want to start with a drummer and then I'll figure out whatever I'm going to do.
Get that funky drummer in there. Yep.
So, but how do we start our album, whether it's jazz or anything else? What's the perfect way? And is there? That's my follow-up question. Is there an actual perfect way? Is it different in different scenarios? Solo artist, band, rock album, pop album, rap album? Will this kind of perfect system work in every situation?
Tailor to your needs.
Just not Taylor Swift.
What's the perfect way to start an album? With this question, I'm assuming that everybody's on the same page as me with this. Listening to an album from front to back is pretty different than listening to it on shuffle. This is certainly not the case every time, but I think most musicians have a method to their madness. Even if their album isn't conceptual, even if the songs aren't telling a specific linear story, they put the tracklist together in a specific way for a reason. On Watch the Throne, for example, song number 4 and song number 5 flow into each other very well. It's a beautiful transition. Even if these songs weren't originally made with the idea that they needed to be back-to-back on the album, that's the way it turned out. Kanye and Jay decided that that was the ideal way to listen to their album. It's storytelling. And while the middle of the story is very important, I think choosing what begins your narrative, choosing what will be your intro to the album, is the most significant decision you'll make with your track list. After all, first impressions are huge. For impatient music listeners in 2019 who have plenty of options to choose from, that first track might be the difference between them deciding to stay for the whole project, or maybe it'll turn them off and they won't give you a chance at all. So again, I ask, what's the perfect way to start an album? Off the top of my head, I started thinking of some of my favorite track number 1s, and admittedly, these songs reveal a pretty clear bias for me. I like the stuff that deliberately tells you, hey, this is it. This is the beginning of the album. It's starting. If you were listening to these albums on shuffle, you'd still be able to tell that these songs are the opening tracks. Apart from 2 of them being named intro, which yeah, that would give it away, these songs are carefully leading you into the greater story of the album at hand. Common's B intro starts with the slow plucking of strings. Around 20 seconds in, the strings start speeding up, and once the strings speed up, we get the steady introduction of new instruments until there's keys, pianos, drums, and orchestra, and eventually Common's vocals. Nothing says slowly leading you into an album like one instrument after another being carefully introduced until they've created a whole song. Intro by the XX does a similar thing, but this time the instruments keep being added and subtracted, then added back in again, and so on, all throughout the track. It almost seems like a metaphor for the group warming up. Imagine a full band taking turns playing their respective instruments, giving each other time and space to join in and play before their set. And then with Dark Fantasy, with Kanye, with this album that I will never stop bringing up, we literally get Kanye's take on the introduction from Roald Dahl's Cinderella, which is read by noted thespian Nicki Minaj.
You might think you've peeped the scene. You haven't. The real one's far too mean.
I don't expect the intro for every album to be as dramatic as this, but how fun is it to get a storybook rhyme to start off a rap album? Nothing says, hey, this is it, this is the beginning of the album, quite like this. And yeah, I said that I liked these introductions because they are blatantly unapologetic about being introductions, but that's not the only reason why they work. Each of these songs help set their album up in a brilliant way. They set the mood, they give you a taste or a teaser of what's to come, And if you like what you hear, you're gonna want to hear all of what these albums have to offer. With that being said, the ideal storybook, I am an introduction type of introduction is not the only way to do it. When you look at the songs that are on screen now, they do not feel like they absolutely need to be the opening tracks in the same way that the songs from before do. If you threw B Intro, Dark Fantasy, and Intro by the XX in the middle of their respective albums, they would feel out of place, right? But if you put Wouldn't It Be Nice, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and Help in the middle of their albums, I don't think there would be any problems. The difference here is that these songs can do both. Yeah, they're great tracks, sure, but even if they're not slowly introducing one instrument after another, or if they don't have a storybook intro in them, they still do their jobs as introductory tracks very well. For these albums, let's expand on Dark Fantasy and the storybook concept, and we'll compare them to a lot of Disney movies. It's that classic old school way of storytelling where there's either a very distinct introduction or perhaps even a prologue, and then very slowly, the rest of the story starts unraveling as time goes on. And then for our other grouping of albums, I think we can compare them to something like the Mission Impossible series. It's all about getting right into the action as soon as we're starting. In the same way that Nirvana's Nevermind goes right into Smells Like Teen Spirit, Mission Impossible says, hey, we're already on a mission, we're already doing spy stuff, Tom Cruise is taking his face off, there is no time for cute introductions. And I think this is where we start to find the answer to our question from before. The perfect way to start an album obviously depends on what kind of album you're making, but now I've at least given us a fork in the road. If your album plays out more like a Disney movie, and you want to follow the specific rules of storytelling, and you want there to be an intro, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution, I personally think that you should really emphasize that concept of an introduction for your track number 1. Do the things that tell your listener, hey, take your seat, pay attention, and listen to what I have to say, because I'm about to tell you a story. Maybe that means introducing your instruments one by one, maybe it means having your band sound like they're doing a sound check before the show, or maybe you want Nicki Minaj to read you the first few pages of Roald Dahl's Cinderella. It doesn't matter specifically what you choose, but you want to give your listener the impression that it is so important to play these songs in the order that you designed them. The success of the entire album depends on the story being told properly. But if your album plays out more like a Mission Impossible movie, if you want to jump right into the action and you want to emphasize the quality of the songs individually instead of as one collective unit, in the same way that Mission Impossible might value cool individual scenes as opposed to creating one cohesive movie, that's cool too. But I think the intro loses its significance just a little bit. At that point, just pick one of the best songs on the album. Pick something that gives the listener a taste of what's to come, and you'll be good. But now with all of my mindless blabbering out of the way, I want to throw a few questions over to you. What's your favorite opening track to an album? And more importantly, what makes it your favorite? Does it properly introduce you to the story of the album, or is it just a good song? Is it more Disney, or is it more Mission Impossible? And last but not least, do you think there's anything to what I've said here today? Would conceptual albums fail without a distinct opening track? And would a distinct opening track feel out of place on a non-conceptual album? Be sure to let me know, and thanks for watching. Hey everybody, thank you for watching that video. Be sure to comment down below with the answers to all those questions I asked. I'm really interested to see what you have to say. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can buy my merch, support my Patreon, and thank you again. I'll see you soon.
Harrison, you did give a good answer, and it was fair and balanced. There is no one perfect way for every album, but depending on what you're going for, I love the intro approach.
Yeah.
To me, that's a great way of setting up the songs that are going to come after it. But like you said, if you were hitting it random, unless you call it intro, you might not identify it as the beginning. And going back to the two artists I mentioned, Cole Seth and Mavi, both their concept albums started with an intro.
Yep.
Nice little short one, minute and a half in Cole's case, and it set the mood for the entire album.
Exactly. I do like the intros as well. Starting an album with that, and again, it doesn't have to be every album. It's nothing wrong with an album that is just a collection of songs, but albums that are meant to be an album are also a fun journey to go on.
Yeah, I think it's more important to worry about this if you are making a concept album. A concept album needs that kind of direction at certain points in the album. Whereas, yes, Appetite for Destruction, I could just hit random and every song kicks ass. Doesn't matter how they do them.
True.
But if a band does do like the Nirvana transition or Led Zeppelin, like if this song goes into this song on the album, then when you see them live, when you hear this song, you're going to hear this song afterwards because they're meant to be together.
And that was one going back to the Grateful Dead a little bit. There were certain songs that always went together, like Scarlet Begonias into Fire on the Mountain was one that you could hear one without the other, but you're most likely, if you're hearing Scarlet Begonias, you're gonna hear Fire on the Mountain because it's such a good transition and they go together so well.
Yes, you kind of force me to have to listen to both, otherwise my ADD will be like, I need to finish, I need resolution. Which he made a good point there, as like in general. The same way you're trying to get that flow in a single song and get that resolution on an album scale, it's the same concept.
I actually started thinking about Atom Heart Mother again, that 20 some minute long song from Pink Floyd. And I was thinking about the first 45 seconds or so, where it's just like the sound of like water like lapping up against a boat, and then very slow instruments come in and you build to something and then it actually crashes into the song. So like it would be if you took everything right up to the very before that first crash, right? Everything up to before that would be intro, and that's maybe 40 60 seconds, somewhere in that range. But if you took that one song and turned it into an album, you would get 6 7 songs out of it, where there are distinct spots where you could cut it and make it an extra song, but they just all made it into one song and made it a 23-minute thing, and then put another couple songs on it and made it into an album.
And they did all that by mailing the tracks to each other, which blows my mind.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Their workflow is very unique for that time.
Oh yeah, but got it done. I mean, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I like the assessment, Harrison. People should consider how they go into an album, and your thoughts on the intro. That's my jam. Like that's where I would go first. But I do like the idea of like the band tuning and that kind of feel, like, okay, we're getting up on the stage, and if an album starts like that, then I'm going to feel like I'm at a club.
Mm-hmm. And some songs it'll start with like kind of like distant muffled radio chatter or something like that before the song kicks in, like that kind of a thing, where they're kind of setting up a scene, trying to put you into a certain room and then spring the song on you.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to have visuals if you're using sound effects properly that way. The visuals are up here. People come up with their own.
Even just footsteps going across. Like there was another Pink Floyd one, but going back to Atom Heart Mother, I think it was Alan Psychedelic Breakfast at one point. They basically just have a recorder running where everyone comes in and starts making breakfast, and then someone sits at the piano and starts playing a song, and at the end everyone like walks out, and then they come back in to like turn the recorder back off. But you do at certain points just hear footsteps going across the floor from right to left and up the stairs and out. And
I was thinking of the footsteps as the lawyer was going to get the worm to bring him to the trial.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like the sound of them like coming from behind, going past, and then going away was genius stereo work there.
And explosions at different times in there as well, like happening throughout the stereo field also. Good stuff.
I wouldn't kick an explosion out of my song unless it was too loud.
Yeah. Got to control it. Little absolute compression there.
So at Alpha Media, a freshie to our additional subscriptions, and we are going to have an indie night, so I will be back.
We'll be back.
Indie is where it's at nowadays for most of us. Now, this is not a freshie channel. We have been here on our songwriting nights. That's where we initially found it, at Holistic Songwriting. Great channel for songwriting advice. And whenever we're covering it, this is one of the ones that is in my top list. And go figure, they covered album structure and song types. And also pulling the lever, like getting happy with like how you're going to lay out your album. What I like about this approach is when you're looking at your songs and you've got your 12 songs, or in this case 11, and thinking of them, identifying them in this kind of approach is a good thing to do. Like, what is the purpose of this song? Is it the intro, the opener? Is it a filler? Where should I put my fillers? How should I spread out the album? It's like making a set list when you play live.
Yeah, that is what I was going to compare it to, is set lists when you're playing live, and the work that I see people put into making set lists, because some bands, they don't even have a set list. They just get up there and see what feels right, and they go from one song to the next based on, random calls. But most of them have a set list that they really spent some time on, and a lot of times it's what key things are in to go from one to the next to make sure things sound like they don't clash too terribly.
Yeah, I would prefer to have a set list and know what the hell I'm going to be doing. The only time I'd be cool without having a set list is if everything we're going to do, we've already practiced to the point where whoever starts that song, when they start that, I'm ready to play it. And I can go without a set list, but we better practice.
or the other side of that, where everything that we're playing is completely unscripted and we're just going to be bouncing the whole time. Like, we're going to start playing something in B, go. and sometimes that happens and it just organically comes together, and, you kind of negotiate changes at some point, because everyone's just doing the same thing, and then somebody slides up a whole step and, makes the whole thing. Everybody else jumps on board. You can do that sort of thing. But at the same time,
when you have a Jeff Beck or a Pepe, but the band members I had, we needed to practice.
Yeah, and that's where, playing at the level of the people that you're playing with, in terms of keeping everybody, comfortable with what they're playing and on the same page. And, if you have people who want to just sit there and jam and noodle around and, shift keys randomly and find their way to the new spot, that's great. If you're trying to record an album, you're literally trying to script something out. You want to have scripted parts. You want to, have a much more focused, work session, let's say.
Yeah, and if you're really trying to put together a well thought out album, these are the considerations to make. If you just throw it at the wall and see what sticks, you might not have the same album.
One thing to be aware of also is looking at just this page right here, being able to accurately analyze your own work. Some people, every single song, they won't put it out unless it is a banger. So they might say, they look at this list and they say, no, I have 11 songs. I'm putting them on an album. That's 11 bangers. That's, well, yes and no. I mean, if you listen to them all one after the other, do they all sound like they all stand out like the banger? Or, is this something
ironically, if they're all bangers, you're going to take away some of the bang from some of the songs. If every song kicks ass, again, I go back to Appetite for Destruction. I can't pick like the song I like the most on there. We can some based on money, but some songs shadowed others and some overshadowed them.
But can you, like, if you're putting together an album, if you had 11 songs you're looking to put on an album, could you look at 2 of those songs and say, these 2 are light filler, these 2 are dark filler? Or would you consider if songs are filler, I wouldn't even put them out? You know, some people look at their music in that way, where they think of every song as the pinnacle of what they could do with a song, and they can't analyze it on a scale where they're saying some of them are, you know, this one's going to be the single, this one's going to be filler, this one's the closer, this one's the, like, you have to identify.
One of these is going to be on the A side of the 45, and one of these is going to be on the B side of the 45. And ironically, sometimes Led Zeppelin's a good example. Those B sides sometimes had the better songs that the band or the studio just thought, oh, this is our banger. Oops, flip the album around.
And if you did have 11 songs that you were going to put out and you considered them all to be the banger, well, maybe you'd want to, like, take those and set them aside and take 2 of them and put them on this album with other songs. And you've got like 5 more albums worth of, you know, solid songs to anchor, and you could build albums around those other songs.
If I took the greatest songs from Zeppelin, cross 1 through what was the one with the stairs? 5th one, Coda.
Sure.
Or Van Halen, 1 through 4, and like you take all the bangers across 4 albums. If you did that on one album and then all the rest of the albums were all those fillers, you wouldn't have the same success.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, take, if you had, you know, 10 songs that are all great, you don't have to hold off putting them all out and, you know, drag them out into multiple albums over multiple years. If you don't have the material around them, you're not going to try to just fill to get albums filled. But, you know, you're hoping that you're going to put these 10 out and it's going to be solid, and then you're going to build another 10 after that. You know, like, you're learning from this process to make even better songs going forward. But it could be completely different concepts, though.
If you actually got 11 bangers out of one album, and as you're releasing the singles to, like, the radio, you've got about 12 months of bangers that you can come out, like, every month and keep. Lady Gaga is a good example of that, or even Taylor Swift on a really good album. They basically just strategically release everything on the album every couple of months, and till the next one she makes, we got a banger for every other month.
Exactly. And that's, again, some people will release things when they, you know, they throw it together, they throw some sprinkles on it and they send it out the door. Other people, they'll sit there and really, you know, toil over it for years, even, like, you know, tweaking this little thing and that little thing, because they just never feel like it's quite ready. And then when they're finally ready to release it.
That's the perfectionism syndrome, which I've been there.
Yeah. Again, you know, finding the balance in there is important, because you don't want to just throw something out that's half-assed, but at the same time, you don't want to obsess over it for years and years, tweaking these little things. When, if you looked at the result at the end of that process and you looked at a year earlier, it really isn't that far of a stretch from where it was to where it got to. That last year could have been spent working on other projects, not burning you out, working in new directions.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to actually be able to, like, put a pause on one, and you don't have to rush your work, and you should never feel compelled, like, I've got to put something out every day, because we live in a time now where that mentality is stupid. And do not force your material out just from the mentality that you got to put something out every day. Realistically, no creative type can produce great work every day that way.
Yeah. And even, like, when I first started on BandLab, that was one of the things when I first started collaborating and things, I looked for, you know, songs that needed bass, you know, so like Needs Bass, for example. And I just looked at songs that were out there that they were looking for somebody to add bass to it. So I would just throw something out there every day. And that's not an album. That's not a song I wrote. That's somebody was looking for a part. And it was a little thing.
That's practice.
Right. And that's honing the craft also. Like, that was, you know, early enough on where it's like, you know, practicing on, you know, my recording techniques and, you know, being able to do collaborations and seeing how the community reacts to those things. And it was all positive. It was all very good. And it was one of those things where I did, for a while, I was putting stuff out every day for probably almost a year on BandLab. And then I just literally, like, stopped. at one point a couple of years back, and I haven't put out anything in a couple of years. But part of that was we had stopped streaming on the platform, and part of it is just I haven't logged in and even looked at the account in a long time. I'm sure I've got lots of song invitations that I need to go back and check into, because there's a lot of unfinished stuff there that I would love to get back into. I haven't taken the time to just go back in and look at it.
Luckily, you get to go jam with humans and have band practice and occasional open mics, and those are the most fulfilling and satisfying. And playing around with projects on BandLab and songwriting and things like that, that's something that you don't have to rush it.
What's great also is that some of the bands that we work with, like the band that I'm going to be seeing on Saturday, it's a rock band. They play, 5-piece. They play pretty solid, heavy stuff, right? And the last show we went to was 2 weeks ago. We had a band with them, or a gig with them. They had, I want to say, 3 people in the audience that they have played with before as guitar players. So throughout the night, they are 2 guitar players and 1 bass player. So throughout the night, they brought up people from the audience to play, just to basically come up, and the guitar player who was playing just took his guitar off, handed it to the other guy. He jumps in.
That's always fun.
Yeah. So they did that for a couple songs. They did that for the bass player for a couple songs. They had 2 basses on stage at one point. So we configured it.
That's fun too.
We gave them a separate bass, hook up into the Snake so that they could go straight in instead of going through an amp. And so they had 2 bass players for a song. The best part was towards, I guess it was late in the first set. The singer sees that there's a young kid in the front who's videotaping from his iPad, and he has a sign next to him that says, "Please let me play drums." So the lead singer at one point between songs comes over to talk to the kid, goes back up, and then just calls for the next song. He's just like, okay, we're going to bring up this guy over here. He says he can play drums. Let's see. And they bring him up. So 11-year-old
that's
kid.
Awesome. Thank God he didn't suck.
Oh, he did not at all. I have the video of it. He did an amazing job. But when they asked him, you want to do this song? They offered the song to him. And the first reaction that the kid said was, the live version or the studio version? And I was like, I love this kid.
Hell yeah.
That's the right answer. And, gets up there, killed it, did an awesome job. Whole crowd going nuts, right? His mom's there, videoing the whole thing, and that's going to stick with him forever, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
11-year-old
getting a chance to get thrown on stage, that's
with the
dream.
big light show and I mean, just amazing, right? And then they call him back up. He did such a good job. Towards the end of the second set, they call him back up for a second song. Did an amazing job there too. So I love when they do stuff like that. And it's not that every band will do that. A lot of them won't, because it has to be, they have to be sure that the person can play, for starters.
Yes.
In this case, they were trusting that he could play and that he was not just going to come up there and
they
start smacking
lucky.
around. They got lucky.
They got lucky.
They did. But I love the fact that they were willing to take that chance, and that they were willing. And again, it also depends on the venue, because some venues, the manager could come over and be like, wait, I paid you guys to play. What are you doing calling people up from the audience? Because I've seen that happen too at certain places where, the venue might not like it either. So in this case, it's a place where the band was comfortable with it. The venue was fine with it, and it worked out great. So, it's one of those things. In this case, it was basically a country club, the 19th hole. So it's where you go after your round of golf and all that. So there are kids there all the time anyway. There are bands there all the time anyway, big events, all that kind of stuff. So it worked out well.
Being willing to take chances, that's something we've heard tonight when it comes to album structure. And just like what you have to consider when you're live and what you're going to do, you should consider how you're going to do things on your album. And don't be afraid to take chances on placement of things, but test it, test ears, and don't just go in it rigid. Actually see how everything flows.
Exactly.
That's why album structure and song types.
Yep.
We're going to pull the lever.
Let's see.
What's happening, everyone? Freedom of It, here from Holistic Songwriting. Welcome back to Pulling the Lever. Today we're going to talk about how to structure an album. This is something one of my patrons asked me over on patreon.com. I think it's a really good question and something I thought a lot about when structuring my own album. I didn't follow all of these pieces of advice that I'm going to give you today because I still think it's an artistic work. So, as it is with all the rules that I give you on this channel, take it with a grain of salt. You're still an artist and you still have to make some personal decisions for how you want to do things. But just as a sort of general guideline, I think this is really useful. And I think the advice that I'm going to give you in this video is useful to you and important even to you, even if you are not planning on writing an album ever. Because I think the structure that we're going to talk about is not necessarily the most important thing. I think the most important thing we're going to be talking about is the different kinds of songs you want on an album. The basics of this is storytelling. We really want to tell a story. And so the structure of an album is kind of similar to the structure of a film. And so you're going to hear me use words that you otherwise might know from screenwriting or from, from book writing, things like that. So, we're going to talk about a 12-song record or maybe a 13-song record. I know this is kind of old-fashioned. I know there's a lot of albums now that are 10 songs. But then again, Taylor Swift just released an album that's 18 songs. So there's not really any rules. Basically, the same principles still apply. What we want is kind of a 3-act structure. The first song on your record is probably going to be your intro. Now, that might be a dedicated song that's just a little bit of sound design that is supposed to lead us into the next song on the record, or it's a complete song of its own. Now, what I'm talking about here is really an instrumental kind of intro. The purpose behind this song is really to lead us into the sonic soundscapes of the record and to set us up for what's about to come. It's there to create tension and to basically get us ready for the rest of the album, to put us into a certain mood through sound design. Next, we have the opener. This is a hugely important track in your album, if not the most important track on your record. You want to pick the song that would work the best live. You want to have a song generally that is very energetic, very singable, that has a lot of energy. The opener is there to just impress people. That's really what this song is about. The point of this whole song is to win people over, to make people go, wow, this is crazy. I've never heard anything like this. This is one purpose that you have with the song, and the other side of it is getting people, so one side is getting people hyped up. The other part of it is setting up what this whole record is going to sound like. So kind of saying like, hey, this is our sound. This is what's different about us. Next, we have the first single. This is often in position number 2 or 3 if we look at the intro, the instrumental intro. And this would be really where Act 1 in our 3-act structure begins. This is kind of the exposition, the setup for the rest of the record. And it's kind of there to introduce us to the actual world of the record. So the opener was really like the out there piece. Like this one, it's just a crazy piece of music. The first single is the one that kind of cements like, this is the sound. This is what we're going for. This is our commercial side. The most important single on the record in terms of the structuring is the first single here. And by the way, if I say first single, that means in order on the record, not necessarily in how you release those singles. That's quite a different story because typically in terms of release schedule, you want to release your most out there, your most engaging song first, which is quite a different thing. Here for your record, you want to pick the song that reflects what the rest of the album is going to sound like the best. Next, we have song number 3, which I call the banger. Now, this is the song after the first single. So someone goes to the record store, listens to your record, and they're like, oh, I want to hear the single. This is my favorite song. So they go to song number 2, and they listen to it, it's, the whole song. And then the next song that comes on better be good. This is why I call that the banger. That's the song that's really got to convince them that they're in the right place and that they should buy this record. Basically, what you want to have here is kind of like the single. Ideally, obviously, just as good as the single that we just heard. And it's just a track that's just on the album. So basically, it's your way of telling people, hey, this record is just as good as the single you just heard. And obviously the single is their best track. So this whole record is just all killer, no filler. That's basically your promise with that song. That's kind of the idea. That's your marketing for the rest of the album, if you will, in that way. Then we have songs 4 and 5, and these I call light fillers. Now that doesn't mean they're not serious or anything like that. Again, doesn't mean that they have to be bad necessarily, but these are 2 positions where you can pretty much put anything, so you're not as tied down as with a lot of the other positions in your record. So this is where you can put your songs that maybe are a little bit more experimental. It's a position where you have a little bit more leeway, kind of like a bridge in a single, right? It's still a single, so it still better be commercial, but at the same time, you have a little bit of freedom there and can try out some more experimental things. And that's kind of what we have here. So light fillers 1 and 2 go in positions 4 and 5. Then we have position number 6, and this is again a hugely important one. This is your second single. This is the start of Act 2, the rising action, the confrontation. This is where things get really heated. And so typically, on rock albums, for example, these are the heaviest songs of the record. And this is the case with my album, for example. Song number 6 is going to be the heaviest track on the entire record. So this is where you really want to show people that there's a kind of a different side to what you're doing as well. Because the next song is song number 7. This is what I call the switch. In screenwriting, we call this the midpoint. This is the point of no return where things turn for the worse, right? Where a character is too deep into the story so that they can't return anymore. And this is kind of what we want to do with the record as well. We want to have a kind of midpoint that changes things around somewhat. So this is kind of splits the record in two. We have the lighter first half, which is there to get people excited. And then we have the darker second half, which is there to get people invested and to emotionally win them over. Also, note that it is after the second single. So again, we have this thing of if someone goes to a record store and listens to your second single, song number 6, and they listen all the way through, the next song better be as good as song number 6, right? So again, this is your song where you switch things around. So pick a song that kind of shows a different side of what you're doing. Then we have songs number 8 and 9, and those again are fillers. And in this case, I call them dark fillers because again, they're supposed to show your other side. They're supposed to show your more involved, your darker side. So there's a kind of like a fun side in the beginning, and then there's the side when we get a little bit more down to business, when we get a little bit more serious. Songs number 8 and 9. And then finally, we have song number 10 and 11, and this becomes our third act, or the denouement, or resolution act. And song number 10 is often single number 3, and song number 11 will be your closer. So for the rest of the album, for the last 2 or 3 songs, you typically have a little bit of leeway. There's really 2 approaches that I see happening a lot. So we kind of trying to find an ending to our story that kind of resolves, that kind of has like a happy ending, or we could do a sad ending as well. The way that I really like, and that's maybe just because of my personality, I like the tragic endings a little bit better. So what I like to do is the third single, so song number 10, is going to be a little bit more of a dramatic song, so maybe a little bit slower, a little bit heavier, a little bit darker. And then song number 11 is the ballad of the record. You know, something that's really kind of, you know, pulling the energy back a couple of steps, and it becomes this really kind of small and kind of a little bit of a different arrangement, something else. It's like like the bridge of a song where we really kind of try to explore a different energy of the song. So on my record, for example, it's almost a folk song that happens here. It's still a rock song, and there's still some stuff happening there. But when you hear it for the first time, you're thinking, wow, this is like completely different than the rest of the record. That's the idea behind it, at least. The effect that you want these songs to have is a feeling of nostalgia, and I like the term nostalgic because it embodies a perfect balance of sadness and happiness. That's kind of what I'm trying to go for with my last 2 songs. I'm trying to go for something that is very dramatic, very sad. I want happy tears. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Think of a band that you're really into, seeing them live on stage. The last song that they played better be one where you can cry happy tears. You're really sad that they're leaving. This is their last song, god damn it. But at the same time, you're super happy that you got to be here and share this experience with all these other people around you, right? That's kind of the feeling that we want to go for with our closer. So song number 10 would be the nostalgic, dramatic song, right? And for that, I have some examples like Mirrors by Justin Timberlake is the perfect closer to a record. In my opinion, it's the perfect closer. Because it has a very nostalgic kind of feel. Everyone is going to cry when that song comes on at the concert in the very last position, right? But if you want to go for a comedy ending, what you want to do is after you have your nostalgic song, you want to do one more song that is high energy and pumps the audience up for the next time they see you on stage, they buy your next record, whatever. So you want to get them pumped for the very next contact with them, basically, right? For example, if you want them to buy your next record as well, you could put a song here that just has a little bit more energy, so they don't end up feeling sad after they heard your third single, right? Song number 10. That's kind of the idea behind this, really. Now, why did I say all of this is important if you're not even writing a record? I think it's important because what I've just given you are a couple of blueprints for songs that you can use regardless of whether you're writing an album or not. Because a lot of people think there's just one great song, but and there's just one way to write a great song, and that's just not true. There's so many different kinds of songs. They all have their different purpose, and writing with a purpose in mind really helps you write good songs, I think. Because it's really difficult to write a song that works for all situations. It doesn't make sense, right? You won't be able to write a song that works in a lounge situation as well as on stage to get people to cheer. So let's talk about these different songs one more time and why I think they're important to you as a songwriter, regardless of whether you're going to use them on an album or not. So there's the opener. Again, this is a great live song. This is the first song people play when they come on stage. These are often songs that get performed at every single concert. Not a lot of people write these kinds of openers for bands. And the songwriters that do sometimes make a pretty good buck off of it, because these are the songs that bands play live, and playing live is still a great way of income for songwriters. Then we have the singles. Obviously, we don't have to talk about those. We got the banger, which is basically another single that just didn't make the cut quite enough. It almost made the single status, but so we put it on position number 3. Then we got The Switch, which is a song that we can use to show the other side of this artist. And we got The Closer. So those are the 3 songs that I suggest you take away from this. It's the opener, it's the switch, where we can turn things around a little bit, where we can take things from light to dark. And then we have The Closer, which is there to make people feel sad that you're leaving, or to give them some new energy for their way home. That's pretty much it. Hopefully you learned something from this video. I don't really have a big finale, I guess, but hopefully this was very useful to you. If you like to learn more about this kind of thing, and if you want to ask me questions, if you want to send in songs for feedback, and you can do that every single week, you can do that over on Patreon, patreon.com/holisticsongwriting. You can download freebies in the description below this video. You can check out the courses on the website. There's plenty of stuff to do. Check out the other YouTube videos on this channel if you haven't already. Subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and stay gefährlich.
Oh, he's got freebies.
Yeah, gotta love freebies. And another thing is, like, when, sitting down to try to write an album or write songs in that order, for example, might be a daunting task as well. But again, you might be just, you write a song, you finish a song, and as you're listening to it, you might say, oh, this sounds like it's going to be song number 6, in that album position. So now you've got that one in there. And now, a next song that you write, oh, this is going to be the banger. This is going to be over here. So like you're filling in those slots as you are writing different songs.
And it's not uncommon that like the artist or the band who thinks this is the banger, and then turns out like everybody likes that dumbass song we didn't even want to put on the album, but
right. Well, I thought it was light filler. Yeah, I thought it was light filler, and it turns out it's the single. Yeah,
but I really like his strategy there. Both on the opening and closing. But I like bookend mentality there, because that's what gets them coming for the next album, or letting the tape flip and playing it again because that last song fired me up for the first one. And the 3 single mentality. If we're talking 11 songs here, you're going to have a release on one of those early on in the album, one at that halfway point, which I love that he's thinking like old school. In the old days, a tape
Side
had
2.
to flip, a record had to be turned, and the order of things actually had a big impact on why people finished the album. Put your more experimental stuff on the second side, build up to it through the album, and just like if you're writing a good composition that builds up that way, you're doing it in album form.
And just even thinking about story arcs in general, a lot of people, if they're a songwriter, they might not think about things in that way because that is more of a literature thing. But I love the fact that, bringing those 2 schools together, bringing the creativity and, the order from that into songwriting.
Yeah. I feel in his mentality there, he was kind of making that album that is a little bit of everything, and putting the fun tracks at the beginning and getting people into a certain kind of mood. Like, these are party songs, if it's a rock album, and then getting to the darker stuff on the second half, the more experimental things,
Showing another side.
bands who followed that kind of recipe tended to do really good.
Yeah, I love it. That's great advice. And again, some people, they would think about, oh, I'm making an album, so I have this one song that I really like, and now I'm going to make the whole album around that one song. It could be too much. I mean, there's returning to a motif and a theme, but it could also be you're beating a dead horse with the theme by the end of the album.
Yeah. Don't do a David Lee Roth.
I was trying to think of a good example.
David, you know what I'm talking about. Great advice. I did like that. At holistic-songwriting, and he's also got a mothership at .com. Great advice.
Definitely.
That would be my default go-to for a band album. For the kinds of bands that I played with, my bassist Scotty's in the chat, and
nice.
This is how we would have put together our album.
Yep, exactly. And, when I go to rehearsals and we start working on songs, we're usually working on individual songs. We're not usually looking at the whole album as a whole, because we're trying to just get songs down and, build up the library first. So again, to me, it's build the library of material and then see which songs kind of work together to make that album. Because I'd rather try to pull 10 or 11 songs together for an album out of a pool of 20 or 30 or 50, rather than, have 8 songs and try to stretch to 11 to get an album. It's more, I'd rather have too many and try to, pick the ones that make sense for this album and then still have the others that are left to build towards the next albums.
And like we said at the beginning, it's not about how many songs, it's about how much time that those songs take collectively.
And should they all fit together, again, on that spectrum of concept album, should they all fit together, or does it matter, or should they just be a collection of songs? Because again, not every album has to be a cohesive thing. So you're free to release, a completely, random collection of whatever. If you wanted to show that your band can do 10 different styles and you have 10 completely different songs on there, that's nothing wrong with that either.
If Guns N' Roses had actually spread all those hits from the first album, they wouldn't have had to pull that double album bullshit where damn, now you just gave us a bunch of crap. And I mean, there's a couple of good songs in there, but 2 albums? Cocky.
I remember. But Appetite for Destruction was a good call out, because that album was excellent.
I could have took that album and milked it for a decade. If you're thinking about 3 of these songs on this album are going to be our targeted releases, and these are the ones that we're really going to try to get attention to the whole album with. Going in knowing that, you look at your collection and think which are you should have at least 3 singles, 3 releases per album to promote and actually put some marketing, put some effort into getting big.
And again, nothing wrong with EPs, nothing wrong with singles. If you wanted to just do smaller short story stuff that doesn't quite fit a full album, you don't have 10 songs that you want to put together, but you have 3 or 4 that fit a theme that, stay within that 30 minutes. There's nothing wrong with releasing a bunch of singles or EPs. Yeah. It's all about the format and what you're trying to do.
And where you release it. Depending where you release it, there's a market for it if you put it in the right platforms, the right places.
Yes. And with the right names, like you were saying, having it in the track name, if it's an EP, it's an EP. If it's a single, it's a single. But make sure you're staying within their rules for the different platforms, and having it in the name would keep that from getting renamed in those platforms.
Yeah. Well, I really like the arrangement advice at holistic-songwriting, kick-ass advice. And for our last video, now we're going to talk a little bit more on the marketing side, or at least the mentality hey, we have made this album. Now, how are we going to get the news out there, the noise out there that there's a new album to check out? And Nathan Zed, Freshy channel, and like I said earlier, I almost just used all his videos tonight, because he really covers this topic we talked about across the different, like the beginning, the middle, the end of the process of making an album. And I like this particular one because it is what you don't see being done properly by a lot of artists nowadays. And the ones who come to us and sometimes are looking for help, I'm like, okay, but if we're going to help you, we need to think about this stuff because somebody has to.
Exactly.
Yep. So at the third pew, Nathan Zed over on YouTube is going to talk about the lost art of album rollouts. And I do consider it an art. I consider it a science. You really do want to know the science of releasing an album and not just you spend all this time and effort and making your music serious. This is the final mile that you have to take just as serious.
Exactly. And, you know, of course, if that's the purpose of your music. If you're making music just for yourself, then don't worry about it. But this is getting your music out there, yes.
If you've answered those questions in the videos we watched earlier, you know whether you're doing this to make a profit or to make a name for yourself, or it is just therapeutic, in which case, if it's therapeutic and it's working, no side effects. The best.
Gotta love music.
Yes. So Nathan's going to show us the art of album rollouts, and it's lost. It really has seemed to have disappeared.
Indeed.
Dogs, yeah, falling off, yeah. Come with a classic, they come around.
Years later, say it's a sleeper. Oh my god. We're back at it. The videos about music that have nothing to do with the music itself. Quadrilogy. At this point, call me Ludwig van Beethoven. Call me Nazy. I love the marketing for albums. The album rollout. From the moment a new album is teased to the moment that it's released, the most creative artists are able to immerse us in the world of the album before we even listen to it. By the time we actually get the music, it feels like entering the gates to a place that we've only been able to catch a glimpse of. You know what I'm saying? Catch a little peek. Jumping over the gates of a little. But how does an artist stand out in a sea of a cajillion other artists? There's a million things going on online. Everything is being marketed to us at once. There's movies, TV shows. There's an advertisement every 2 seconds. I'm just kidding. Not to mention there's a news story every day about something ridiculous. So how do you stand out? The perfect album rollout. Because of streaming, the album rollout has shortened considerably, which is a good thing to get the music sooner. But there's less time to build up memorable experiences around the music. Like with The Life of Pablo, I don't just remember listening to the songs. I remember the tracklist notepad with signatures from other artists being added to it, the changing album titles, the Madison Square Garden show, seeing the album cover for the first time and being like, what is this? Especially these days, most rollouts consist of just teasing your fans with snippets you hope will go viral on TikTok and hyping for years with no real date in sight. Drip feeding us. We're starving. So many albums and careers have been forgotten just because of bad marketing and a bad album rollout. I love how something as simple as an artist changing their look is seen as the start of a whole new era. Like when Kendrick goes from cornrow Kenny to Kung Fu Kenny, we're like, oh my, something's happening, man! Something's happening! Which is why it blows me that Chance the Rapper is still wearing the 3 hats from 2016 for promoting his 3rd album. Now we're on the 5th. You absolute buffoon. Bro, please. I want to feel like it's a new era. I want to feel like we're moving on to a new thing. At this point, I wouldn't be mad if he took off the 3 hat and put on a 4 hat. Only a few artists have really given us a rollout that feels like an event. But when they do, it's something really special.
No, you gotta build a bigger world. I'm not gonna make an album. I'm gonna make like an album. I'm gonna make the rollout dope. I'm gonna make the movie with it dope. I'm gonna make everything dope. I'm gonna make a world.
There's a couple of different ways to do an album rollout. There's the traditional way, drop some singles, maybe a video, do the radio talks, podcasts, interviews, blah, blah, blah. That's a tried and true way that has worked for literally decades. And some people still manage to mess that up. But one of my favorites is low-key creating an alternate universe. Donald Glover's rollout for Because of the Internet is one of my favorite rollouts ever. All of a sudden, he started wearing this exact same outfit everywhere to every interview. In these interviews, he was kind of different from his usual, more comedic self.
Like the idea is like, if I want to kill myself, I will. It's not hard to die. I could do it like right now. But like number 2,
Over time, people realized this is a character that he called the boy. When the album dropped, he also dropped a screenplay that goes with the music about this same character, the boy. And then the music videos that were dropped after were interconnected and having like a overarching story about an alien invasion or something. What's going on? Bro, this man is literally creating a universe here. This is so much more than he had to do. And I appreciate that. The Weeknd did the same kind of thing for last year's After Hours and had one of the best album rollouts in recent memory. This man created a character, dressed up as him for the entire year, and his music videos and live performances were like telling the same story. He'll have a live performance where he has bandages all over his face, and then the next video will be like plastic surgery after that, all culminating in the Super Bowl performance where he had like 100 different people playing the same character. This rollout literally felt like a movie. Just the entire dark, eerie, horror, uncut gems vibe that he created was perfect. I love seeing things like this, like Tyler the Creator transforming into the character of Igor for his album.
Yes.
Janelle Monáe with her Emotion Picture visual album. An amazing pun. Which is why it was disappointing to me when Childish Gambino on the new album did like an anti-rollout. Let me set the stage for you real quick, okay? Let me just tell you how beautifully this man had set himself up for an incredible rollout. This man had a #1 single, okay, with This Is America. He was on SNL as the host and the musical guest. 2 Grammy wins, a movie on Amazon, a summer pack with 2 songs, a Lion King movie, all these things that seemed like it was perfect to gear up for an amazing drop, and then nothing. For a year, there was nothing. And then randomly dropped on the radio with no title, no freaking cover, no song titles. I brought this up a lot because it still confuses me to this day. He even put it on his website, and then it wasn't available on streaming until a week later, so it lost the whole like surprise drop aspect. The only thing that could have made this rollout worse is if it was at the very start of a pandemic. Oh wait, it was. To this day, it bothers me, but it also fascinates me.
we're heavily invested in your situation.
It's not easy to do a surprise release. Only a couple of artists can really pull that off perfectly in what I like to call the gotcha. It's not easy to do the gotcha. It's been done in the past by Prince and Radiohead, but the modern surprise drop was basically originated by Beyonce self-titled in 2014.
I see music. It's more than just what I hear.
Just the fact that we didn't hear or know about any of this stuff in a time where it's basically impossible to not know everything before it happens. Everything is leaked. I try to watch anything, I go on Twitter and there's already spoilers about it before it even comes out. Y'all were trying to guess the ending of WandaVision halfway into the first episode of WandaVision. But for this album, we didn't hear anything about it until it happened. And she had a video for freaking every song. How did that happen? How is that even possible? Everything changed with the Beyonce joint. The gotcha drop showed that in the internet age, there's still room for creativity and surprise. This led to Drake doing the same thing with If You're Reading This Is Too Late, Frank Ocean doing the same thing with Blonde. I'm telling you right now, there's nothing like waking up and seeing an entire album is already out. Usually we go through months of build-up and singles and speculation. She said we're not doing none of that.
I miss that immersive experience. Now, people only listen to a few seconds of a song. They don't really invest in a whole album.
U2 kind of had a surprise drop, but they low-key did it in the worst way of all time. It was announced at an Apple event and released on iTunes the same day at no cost. But the problem was it appeared in everybody's phone and you couldn't delete it even if you wanted to. For 3 years, there was just this picture of this man hugging his son's stomach in my library. I was like, get this out of here. Most people literally can't tell you anything about this album besides the backlash. I've never seen so many people so mad at getting something for free. On the other hand of the gotcha drop, there's what I refer to as the endless hype rollout. We knew about this album 2 years before it released. Travis Scott announced this album, his 3rd album, before the 2nd album was even released. He was hyping this thing like it was the Bible 2. It took on like a mythological feeling. The legend of Astroworld. I remember thinking I was gonna be 80 years old, like, some say Astroworld is still going to release. But no, it actually came out. Travis was able to combine the endless hype with creating a world too. Astroworld has the imagery of space theme parks. When you were going to a Travis concert in 2018, you weren't like, oh, I'm gonna go see Travis live. It was like, no, I'm going to Astroworld. It was either you're going to Astroworld or you're getting left behind. And that helped with the lore of this album and the hype, and it was massive. Of course, the music had to be good, but if it wasn't for this rollout, I honestly don't think we would see Travis working with freaking McDonald's, PS5, Fortnite, the Super Bowl, Tenet soundtrack, Reese's Puffs. This man is gonna run out of brands to work with. It actually says he's doing a sponsor for Arby's Meat Mountain. Not only that, but the features were hidden, which encouraged you to listen to the whole album and get surprised every time somebody shows up.
Sun is down, freezing cold. That's how we already know.
This created its own hype and its own experience outside of just listening to the music. This man had Drake, The Weeknd, Tame Impala, Frank Ocean, Stevie Wonder, and he didn't put their names in it. That's a freaking flex, man. That's like if Drake was in this video and I didn't put it in the title or thumbnail. Speaking of Frank Ocean, he combined the endless hype with the surprise drop. He had the endless hype and he literally released a project called Endless.
Coincidence?
Lil Uzi did the same thing with Eternal Take. Cardi did it with Whole Lotta Red. Give the people a name to latch onto and then tease it for years, just allowing the mythology to build and grow. Beethoven had a crazy rollout. Y'all don't remember the hype before Fur Elise dropped? Everybody was like, nah, he's falling off. He hasn't dropped a hit since Symphony No. 9. One thing about the endless hype rollout is that it has to live up to expectations, which isn't easy. That's why I like the gotcha. You don't have to spend months building hype and dropping singles. It avoids one of the things I hate the most about the album rollout, when artists drop 60% of the album as singles already. Dropping all the best songs on the album before it even comes out. It's like putting all the best scenes of your movie in the trailer. By the time you watch the movie, you've already experienced all the best parts. It's just like, the first song that's released should set the tone for what people expect, but you gotta pick a good first single. Yummy single-handedly ruined that last Justin Bieber album rollout. And that album actually has some bangers. And y'all are sleeping on that album because of Yummy.
Yeah, that's what love is. That's what your love is.
Oh my god, come on, man. That's bad. Get out of here. But making Yummy the big lead single and then doubling down on it and trying to get everybody make it #1, it made everybody write off the entire album. Now on the other hand, if you have an amazing first single like the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy rollout is bringing stuff of legends, dude. Literally, it's like a Greek story. There was the incident with Taylor Swift, led to Kanye's exile. He disappeared in Hawaii, creating music with some of the best artists. Everybody had to wear suits in the studio, and then coming back to the VMAs with this performance of Runaway. And then the rollout of the actual album was Good Fridays, dropping a new free track every week leading up to the actual release of the album. This was Kanye using the internet at its best when Twitter and everything was just starting out. This man is good at the rollout, which I like to refer to as the absolutely bonkers rollout. For Yeezus, this man unveiled the first single by projecting his face on buildings in 60 different locations. They showed the album artwork and it was just a clear case, CD, and red tape like you're getting a bootleg. It drew attention to it. It was absolutely bonkers. He also had one of the only good drama beef rollouts with 50 Cent, where they had a friendly competition kind of to see who would sell the most albums first week. Beef is the worst way to do an album rollout, man. Some artists, the only way they know how to have any attention on their own music is being super confrontational with another artist. They'll say something wild and be like, by the way, my album is dropping soon. No, do your own thing. I cannot stand this method, bro. Nobody's caring about you or the music. They're only there for the drama. Having said that, Mr. Beast, I disliked your last video. That's right, I said it. It just wasn't my cup of tea. By the way, guys, I got a new single coming out this Friday featuring Mr. Beast. The most underrated rollout is when artists are of the people, when they actually build relationships with their fans. Daft Punk launched their Random Access Memories album in the random town of Weewa, Australia. Whoa, whoa, whoa. J. Cole was literally just pulling up to people's houses. This man did a house tour. Imagine you wake up and J. Cole is just looking over you, just in your house. 2 Chainz built the pink trap house that was on his album cover, where they had community events and parties, and now it's an Atlanta landmark. These blur the line between celebrity and regular person. It builds better connection with the fans. It makes them want to listen to the music. The modern way to market music can be basically defined in one word: snippets. Lil Nas X using memes for Old Town Road, super internet savvy. He's been hyping up this one song since like last July. It was even in a Super Bowl commercial before he released it. Playboi Carti is like a human. Song snippets. This seems like the future of this super fast-paced ADHD music consuming world we're in right now. But I appreciate the world building that some artists are able to do. A messy rollout doesn't necessarily mean a bad album either. Anti had a notoriously messy rollout, and that album it's still a classic. The music lasts longer than the rollout. The music is what's really going to be remembered. But the rollout is an opportunity to create a moment. I don't even know how many people actually think about this. It's just something I love. I even made my own album rollout in 2017, even though I don't make music. I created a soundtrack story through playlists as a rollout for my merch, with a character and album covers and a track list. I worked with HK from Brockhampton to create all the visuals. It's low-key one of the best things I've ever done. I cannot lie. What's your favorite album rollout or way that an album was marketed? Do you prefer the huge build-up, or do you want it just dropped in your lap randomly? Let me know in the comments down below. I think there should be rollouts for everything. Actually, This entire video has been a rollout for my child. That's right, guys, I got a baby on the way. Here's a sneak peek. Here's the tease for the name. Let me know what you guys think it is. He's dropping at midnight tonight, so gotcha.
Oh, you better be having a baby.
Absolutely bonkers.
Congratulations if you are having a baby.
Gotcha. Midnight tonight.
Oh, I think he covered it all. Nathan, your understanding of the industry and the purpose of rollouts, which in the 21st century with the internet and how things have changed is fascinating. In the old days, MTV, like if there was a band that was coming out with an album, they came out with a video because millions of people were watching that channel, and next thing you know, that album sold because MTV basically led them to it.
Exactly. Totally different time. And that's the thing is, the marketing has changed over time because the product has changed, the way of purchasing has changed, like all of it has changed, and it's changing more rapidly as time goes forward. So it's a question of, will things be done the same way in the next couple of years?
Well, what sucks nowadays is, yes, you can make a music video for your song and your band, but now you have to go put it up on YouTube and you got to advertise yourself because there's no MTV out there to actually like get the music fans, just like the radio would. Like if somebody heard a song on the radio and it's like, damn, I really like that song, I got to find out who it is. And hopefully the radio announcer, in the old days, they used to say that was this. And like nowadays, radio is so mechanical that they just play songs in a playlist, and you've actually got to go find out who the hell that was yourself.
Yeah. In some cases, the radio stations will just have their playlist posted, so that if you just go to their website, they'll tell you, oh, whoever we just played is right there. But at the same time, it's good to be able to, it's good to be surprised. It's good to hear something and be like, oh wait, that was this band. I didn't even realize that. So like a totally different sound from them. So I do appreciate that side of it too.
Well, and it's interesting that in the different approaches there, like the gotcha approach can work if you're the right kind of artist. If you're the artist that like, oh, Lady Gaga moved, it's trending, then yes, that kind of artist can pull off a gotcha. But if you're still trying to make a name for yourself, that's not the rollout you want to have. When he mentioned like get interviews, before the album's about to get released, that's the time to make some noise. Come to Angified, do an album release, a preview. Eremos is doing that right now for the one that's about to come out. That's a good way to actually get a bunch of new listeners and fans by promotion. Put the news out there.
Exactly. And that's where, just getting the information out there. It's the important thing.
Ange does it like a champ.
Every night. And we help out on Thursdays.
Yes. Gotcha. Well, I really liked all of that analysis on the rollout, Nathan. You really covered the different approaches that can work nowadays depending on your resources. Chances are buying a pink house and having like neighborhood parties is way cheaper than spending millions in marketing that sometimes goes nowhere.
Yeah. And again, things change so fast and things are changing so fast. The one I was going to mention was, you could write a song today and you could sit there and spend, a couple hours with some of these AI video editors, AI video, creation tools, and have a music video that looks as good as, any of the professionally made music videos back from the MTV days. You could be there in no time. Just have a concept. Your song can be, feeding the concept of the video. Like this song feels like it should have this kind of a video. You just kind of walk your way through it, and you can talk your way through the tools and get it.
I think the best point, the best conclusion to everything he noticed there, we in the 21st century, they call it transmedia. We live in a transmedia age now. It's not just about audio, it's not just about video. It's actually all forms of media together. So if you're about to come out with an album and you do a gotcha and you write a story that actually ties into the album, even though it's not actually the story in the album, uh, it's like Garth Brooks when he turned into that other dude in the 90s. And it didn't work so well for him in that situation, but it definitely got people talking about, like, dude, Garth Brooks is playing some character and on this album, and he actually made a whole album as a totally different persona than what he was famous for.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, some people just wanna try out something different, some people, they're a country star and they wanna try out something that's more rock, but they don't wanna, alienate their country, crowd.
That's what he was trying to avoid. He's like, "You all know me as a country guy. I wanna be this rocker."
Mhm, mhm. And then you come up with a really silly name and make yourself a rocker.
Yeah, was it Chris something or another?
Mhm,
Yeah.
Rockstar.
I still like you, Garth. I just got confused during those years.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Yep, exactly.
at the 3rd pew, great way to, like, sum up our album knowledge tonight. I It was highly educational tonight. Building an album, I talk about it in the back with people who are trying to do it, and these modern albums and these modern approaches, the times have changed. What we saw tonight, this isn't the 1980s mentality anymore.
Nope. You gotta change with the times. And again, when it comes to the video, when it comes to the audio, there's a lot of different things, album art, all that kind of thing is a lot easier now than it used to be, where in the old days, you'd have to, have somebody in the band or have somebody in the band know somebody who's a really good artist so you can get something like that done or, commission something like that. But now you can use AI tools and get a good start, and build from there.
Yes, but put some human in it.
Yes, absolutely. I see that's the thing is I liked using, I would use the AI as a starting point, rough ideas, especially storyboarding is to me like the way to go with it. Like you can have it storyboard out like different sections of what you would envision a video to be like, and then you can use those as benchmarks or starting points.
Yeah, in the case of getting that second ear, and I would actually play around with the AI there. I tested on humans, like, "Hey, Glenn, what do you think about this order?" But I'm also curious what the AI might think if you throw like an album at it and say, "Should I rearrange these songs?" You might get some interesting feedback from it.
Yeah. And again, the to me, the set list thing, I've got a whole pile of set lists from all the bands that I work with over time. And like just looking at the way the songs are arranged and how the amount of thought that goes into whether it's with some bands, it's the who's singing different songs. So like, there's going to be one person is singing the majority of the songs, but he needs a break here and there. So like, okay, he's going to sing these 4 and then we're going to have these 2 are sung by somebody else and then these 4 and then somebody else. And then we go to the break time and then this and that. So they break them up for reasons like that. Sometimes it's okay. These songs are together because these are both in drop tuning. So I'm gonna have to switch guitars. So like I switch guitars and I do this song and this song back to back because they're both in the same key that both need the drop tuning and then they go to the other one, So there's different reasons to do things like that or have things in certain orders when it comes to set lists.
Yeah, and if I got a band member like Scotty, my old bassist, just keep rocking. I know that like if I toss him the frisbee, he'll be ready.
Exactly. And when sometimes like I've seen people where they have instead of having to switch guitars, they just have a drop tuning pedal so that like they can just hit, click down and you drop tune from E down to D or whatever so they can play and not have to switch. But they have to remember to deactivate the pedal before the next song starts because otherwise they're starting to go, wrong key. Nope. They got it.
Same problem when I hit the transpose button and damn, I forgot to put it back.
Exactly. So if you're going to use a cheat like that or, a trick like that, make sure you undo it.
I don't cheat.
To trick them.
I just get creative.
Yeah, creative solutions.
Uh, we definitely got some creative ideas on album assembly tonight and creative solutions.
Yeah.
I've,
And
I've
again,
got some more lined up there.
Yep. And whether you're starting from zero and trying to go from zero to a full album full of stuff, or whether you're just going to try to start making songs and then try to make an album that makes sense after you have some material. Again, if it's all going to tie together as a theme, you could be writing a bunch of different songs that don't go together. And then you say, okay, well, this one has a theme worth latching on to, worth building on. So we can take this character and, build a bunch of stories from there. That's one way to do it, is to try to, find your way to the song that feels like it has an album worth of stuff to explore, and then dive in on that.
Yeah. And any of you out there, if you've got like an album and you're wondering about these things and you want that second ear, come in, say hi. Over here, we've got some like expert ears when it comes to album assembly, and we can help you with some of that.
Absolutely. And tell you what it sounds like to us, for sure.
Yeah, Glenn's got a huge head. He knows how to use it.
I use both ears. On Thursdays, every week.
Yes. And we will be back next Thursday. We're on season 6, second episode.
6 years.
Yeah,
Just like that.
I barely blinked.
Yeah. 5 in the can, huh? Just like that. 5 years.
We're going to need a bigger can, Ange.
Maybe a bucket.
Only when I'm sick.
Or would it be, I think I need a bigger box. That was Taco Bell.
You're going to need a bigger Pink Floyd poster.
Yes, indeed. The back catalog is what that one is.
We'll be back next Thursday, and Monday, Wally will be back to motivate you.
And we'll see you guys then. Thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
Good night.
We cover digital audio workstations and music tools. We explore theory, gear at 82. How to arrange, compose, and the art of arranging. Taking a look at AI and how the times have changed. On a PC or a Mac, and even with a mobile device, we'll be talking about it all every Thursday night. From software to plugins and synths that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talkin IT. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. With the tutorials and tips on how much rev. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking